Accessing agent files. Brian Sovryn. Early 21st century anarchist. Creator and host of the podcast Sovryn Tech. By the year 2021, the show would be instrumental in the downfall of various conservative ideologies in the government, helping usher in an incredible time.
Hey, want to take a walk on the wild side and experience the bleeding edge of technology? Then get ready, because it doesn't get much more edgy than this. You're in for a wild ride. You're listening to Sovryn Tech with your host, the man in triple black, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He's got a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
The Libertine-in-Chief, here once again for another great episode of Sovryn Tech. That's right, the Stefano Demira never dies.
The Alpha Caveman.
The Alpha Caveman, oh my.
That's what you are to me. You've dragged me kicking and screaming by my hair, clubbed me over the head. No, that wasn't necessary, but there may have been a long object involved.
I love this, okay. This is the best intro to this show in history. So if I'm the Alpha Caveman, that would make you my, well, let's move. Of course, you are the producer of the show, Sovryn Tech, the lovely and hyper-intelligent, the Duchess
Paleolithic.
The Duchess of Debauchery, Dr. Stephanie Murphy. Thank you so much for being on today.
Oh, it's my great honor and pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Your laughter is often recorded in the background while I'm doing the show.
Well, it's just because you say these hilarious things, like impersonating Bill O'Reilly on the last one.
Oh, yeah. Fuck, we'll do it live. Anyway.
Fuck it, we'll do it live.
So yes, of course, I did tease last week that you would most likely be on the show. I would dare never make a demand of anybody, but very kind of you to be on, because we have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of very deep subjects later on, and this is being recorded pretty late at night. So because we have a long weekend ahead of us.
Indeed. This is a late night sea salt soiree.
That's, yeah. Inside joke. It has to do with chocolate. So,
sea salt soiree is a type of chocolate that we sampled this week that was really delicious, but we just thought the name was so funny.
Yeah, it's pretty classy. But actually, I totally forgot what I was just about to say, but
we're recording this late at night.
I was going to say it's Labor Day weekend, so
right.
We got to make sure a lot of people get into labor, and so
what
why
better
not have
way
why not have the sexiest voice in Liberty, that being you, out there for that?
Thank you.
To induce some labor.
By the way, did you know that sex is actually a great way to induce labor if a woman is like super pregnant?
Really?
It's called the Italian induction.
See, the things you learn on Sovryn
I went
Tech.
to medical school for 2 years.
That's right. That's right. So there you have it.
The semen actually has chemicals in it, prostaglandins, that like speed up the process of getting labor going.
Well, guaranteed, you on the radio or on the podcast feed is definitely going to induce some labor on Labor Day weekend, I am sure. But
game on.
Yeah, game on. But speaking of a big weekend coming up, I just want to mention this once again, Keenvention 2014. That
is going to be a big weekend.
Yeah, October 31st to November 2nd, I believe, are the dates, and you can go to keenvention.info to check that out. And Stephanie, you will be hosting a Bitcoin panel, as you did last year.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. So I got all new people for my panel, just like you did for your panel that you're going to be hosting.
I had one person return for my tech panel.
Ah, gotcha.
I had Johnson. I'm going to have him come back. Because he's
the return of the Johnson.
The return of Big Johnson. I will have him on because he is just such a realist. He really puts me in check a lot of times in a good way. And I love to have him on board.
Yeah,
so,
I love listening to him.
Yeah, he's great.
He's really cool. Cool guy. But anyway, I filled up my panel, and it's actually a little bit overfull. Like, I sent out these invitations to be on the Bitcoin panel thinking that, probably half of these people won't get back to me at all. Maybe one or two of them will say yes. I asked you. I figured you would probably say yes, but...
Yeah, I got a few things to say about Bitcoin.
There may have been some bribery involved with sexual favors.
It might have been.
Maybe. Or maybe you were just doing it for the love of Bitcoin. But I ended up actually getting...
I'd say that. There were some favors.
I ended up actually getting 5 people on the panel, which is like a little too much, but hopefully it'll work out. And
you can handle it.
I'm also going to be on the media panel at Keyinvention. And funny story I want to tell, I was making preparations for us going to Keyinvention because as of now, we're planning to be there for the whole weekend. And it's like Halloween weekend. Like Derek J is having a Halloween party.
Right.
And I wouldn't want to miss that. So,
no, certainly.
And, we live in New Hampshire, but we don't live super near Keene. So it's probably easiest to just, have some place to crash in Keene. So we figured, all right, well, I've got some hotel points because I've been traveling a lot this last year. So I'll look at the hotel where it's getting stored, and I had some points saved up I could use. And I was looking at the different rates to book a hotel room at the hotel where Keyinvention is at.
Right.
And they had like the AAA rate, the senior citizen rate, the weekend stay rate.
The Sovryn Hotel, that is.
The Sovryn Hotel. And it was Sovryn because they also had a government/military rate.
Oh,
and so I was looking at all these different rates, and it's like the typical rate is $99 a night. Classy hotel, I know. And
hey, it's a Sovryn Hotel. Take it easy.
We actually sprung for the $120 night room. But the typical rate was like $99 a night. And then with the AAA discount, it was like $89 a night. Same thing with the senior citizens discount. But with the government/military rate, the normal rate was $99 a night. That didn't change. But the government rate was $140 a night. It was actually more. It was like a negative discount.
No discounts in New Hampshire, folks. Not for the government.
I love New Hampshire.
Live free or die.
They actually have to pay extra.
That's fantastic. Anyway, we will also be at Coins in the Kingdom, which is going to be a fantastic event. You can find out about that online, of course.
Yep. Who was it that heard that title and thought it was a Christian event?
Oh, I don't know.
Someone on social media or something.
Yeah.
So it's not a Christian event. It is the kingdom as in the Magic Kingdom of Disney World. Disney World? Yeah, Disneyland is in California, right?
Yes.
Okay, so Disney World, and it's going to be a really community-focused event, which is...
For cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, which basically means it's a way to party with cool Bitcoin libertarians.
That's right.
Basically, I don't think there's going to be any talks about regulatory compliance there. Let's just put it that way.
If there is, I will make sure to be in the audience and handle it contritely. So
we'll be throwing rotten tomatoes.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to go there. And then we're hopping a plane like that very same weekend. There's another conference in Vegas. So I have to do full disclosure for the audience because I think I may have made you look like kind of a jerk a couple weeks ago because the backstory with this Inside Bitcoins Vegas is, okay, last year we went to Inside Bitcoins Las Vegas and we did a podcast called Inside Bitcoins Sucked. Because
something
it sucked.
to that effect, yeah.
Because we basically didn't, enjoy a lot of aspects of it. I mean, there were some enjoyable things about it, but we had some definite issues with it. The main one being that it was really not a liberty-oriented event.
Yeah, not at all.
Like
there's a couple good people there. Mark Hochstein, there's some others that are really great guys, but otherwise...
for sure. But they definitely had the regulatory bootlickers kind of mixed in there.
Well, the DAC was... Or the DAC. The DAC was stacked. The stack was...
The DAC
was stacked. What the hell?
Wow.
This is what it gets for being a late night. All right, anyway.
So,
the DAC was stacked. So that's going to be a bit
That's
cheers
the title of the show right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, we didn't like that about the last Inside Bitcoins one. And they didn't ask either one of us to speak at that conference either. And so, we had some conversations about that, feeling like, well, maybe no one really takes me seriously in the Bitcoin world. And then there was that video crew that came up to me and was like, so, you're one of the only women here. Why are there no women in Bitcoin? And then they made this video that made women kind of look foolish at the conference.
Oh, yeah, and I flipped out about that.
Ambush interview that they did.
Yeah.
Shit journalism.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we had some problems with at that event last year. But this year, I did get invited to speak. And, it was an attractive package. I felt like they were...
you are an attractive package.
The conference was taking me seriously and helping me get there as far as my travel accommodations went. So I was pleased with that. And I said, okay, I'll go and I'll give a beginner intro to Bitcoin workshop because that also is my idea of a good time. Like, I love to teach new people about Bitcoin. So I said I would do it. I also said that I wanted you to go with me.
Right.
And you said, well, yeah, I'll go with you, but aren't we going to look kind of hypocritical? And I had thought of that too, because last year we said we wouldn't go back and we hated it so much. But this year things are a little bit different. And, I basically decided, I'm willing to kind of take that hit and go back. And at the very least, if it sucks again, we'll have more content for another podcast.
Yeah, we'll have a very entertaining bitching session.
We could call it Las Vegas Sucked Again, or something like that. They also changed the venue, so it's probably going to be a better hotel.
Yeah, that might be
the hotel was a major part of why it sucked last year. But
sure.
Anyway, so I accept full responsibility for any hypocrisy that I put onto Brian with that. So if you heard Brian appeal for donations, he has to pay his own way there. I don't, but he does. So if you want to help him get there, that would be very kind. He does a podcast for you every week, and it's free, and he doesn't have ads on his podcast, except for maybe Babylon 5, but you're certainly not getting paid for that.
No, I get paid for none of these ads.
Yeah, and you do a you're so devoted that right now it's past 1 o'clock in the morning, and you and I are sitting here doing a free podcast for you all just to entertain you and have a consistent show out every week. So please send this man some Bitcoin. He really deserves it. And not to say that, and I don't like the word deserve, but he would really appreciate your acknowledgement of his hard work and his efforts.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. And
if you think I'm a hypocrite, you can send me some Dogecoin or something.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
I will full disclosure. Coins in the Kingdom has been very respectful to me.
To both of us. They have been fantastic.
Yeah, it's inside Bitcoins. It's kind of the issue.
I think the best treatment we've had, I've spoken at a lot of Bitcoin conferences over the past year.
Yes.
And the best treatment that I've had has been from the Texas Bitcoin Conference, the Toronto Bitcoin Expo, and anything organized by Jason King and MK Lords. They're awesome.
Yeah,
they amazing. Did the Bitcoin in the Beltway and Coins in the Kingdom, and they've just been fantastic and really accommodating and supportive and kind to us. And funny enough, their conferences, Jason and Megan, have the most women and the most female speakers, whereas there are certain conferences in the Bitcoin world that have zero female speakers and won't even buy me a fucking plane ticket to go to even though they asked me to speak, but they won't buy me a plane ticket. So that just shows where their priorities lie. But Jason and Megan certainly have their priorities in the right place and recognize the true contributions of a lot of people, male and female, in the Bitcoin space.
Yeah.
That they have something to offer to the community, and they're giving respect to those people. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll both be doing some degree of speaking at that event.
Something,
either a panel or
I think the point is mostly to party, which is fine with me.
Yeah, that works for me. Absolutely. So, but anyway, and you will be speaking at the Inside Bitcoins in Vegas. The speech is it's a workshop, so I'm going to be doing it with Jonathan Mohan, right?
Who founded Bitcoin NYC. Awesome guy.
Yeah, great guy.
And we're going to do a workshop teaching people how to use Bitcoins if they're total newbies. So that will be really, really fun. So that's our travel coming up. I'm sorry, I kind of monopolized that segment, but I just really wanted to take some responsibility for the idea that you are going to Inside Bitcoins, even though you may not have wanted to, that may not have been your first choice.
Well, the level of coercion laid upon me was, I must
staggering.
Say, it was well worth it. But anyway.
Did Natalia tie you up to a chair and tickle you with a feather?
Something like that.
That may or may not have happened.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the rapid fire stories, shall we?
Yes, let's do that.
We may not get to our main story, but that's okay. We have a great show lined up with lots of stuff to talk about. But yeah, starting it off, Chrome. Now, this is something that's actually been in beta and in dev channels for a while, but Google Chrome, the world's most popular web browser, and for good reason, it's very secure. Not to say that it's private, but it's very secure, and those are two different things. Is their Windows version, actually, and they have this available for OS X and Linux as far as I understand it, is now available in the stable release. So the official release of Chrome is 64-bit. Which is really interesting because this is 64-bit browsers are not necessarily new. I think there were even as early as Windows XP 64. There was a 64-bit version of XP, if everybody remembers. That in itself actually, I think, had an Internet Explorer that was 64-bit. And then, of course, Vista, when that came out, the 64-bit version, which was the first major 64-bit operating system. And again, I say major. That had an Internet Explorer that was 64-bit, but you couldn't run Flash. And at the time, we're talking, the mid-aughts or later aughts. Without Flash, the internet was meaningless to some degree.
It was just a flash in the pan.
It was a flash in the pan, at least as far as entertainment goes. And so it was purposeless. Nobody really bothered to use it. But now, since Chrome is really it's almost its own OS, and in fact, in some cases with Chromebooks, it is its own OS. Flash, they have Pepper Flash built into it, and Flash doesn't matter anymore anyway because everything's using HTML5. But now, finally, the 64-bit web browser is a dream that has come true. This is not really that... I don't think people appreciate just how big of a deal this is.
Is it a wet dream?
It might be a wet dream, yeah, all over that one eye of Chrome. Oh, this show's getting sexy. It's long been sexy.
We have to help those babies. It's Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend. We got to help those babies get out. Got to help that labor. Anyway, so yes, I'm fully well aware that labor has to do with work, not having a baby. Before anybody thinks, do you realize what I mean? It's amazing sometimes the emails I get where people, I guess...
They just don't get your sense of humor.
It's true. I can be dry.
Yeah, they don't appreciate you.
That is true. No,
to anyone who doesn't get Brian... Go back and listen to every episode of... What episode number are you on right now?
This is
80-something?
88, 89.
88. Wow. Okay, so you need to go back and listen to all hundreds of hours
89.
of Sovryn Tech, and then you will finally grok Brian's brain.
That's right.
And the large size of it.
I love it. So 64-bit version, it's faster, far more secure.
So wait a minute, do I have to close all my tabs before I can install this? Because I would really like to try it, but I have so much unfinished business. Yeah,
you are going to have to delete the Chrome you have right now. It will not automatically update to a 64-bit version if you are running a 64-bit operating system. But you do not have to it won't delete any of your preferences or extensions or anything like that. And in fact, the instant that you reinstall it, it'll ask you, do you want to restore your tabs? And you can. Wow.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's not going to mess with CryptoKit?
No. Well, I haven't tested that. So keep that in mind.
We'll give you a field report.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm not sure. I don't, because it would
that's what I'm always afraid of, is that I'm going to do something to Chrome and then my CryptoKit private key is just going to be gone. So I don't really keep change in my CryptoKit.
Yeah.
For that reason.
Right. No, I understand. The cache, because it doesn't delete the cache and preferences, I would say that your CryptoKit would be fine.
Yeah, and I suppose you can always make a backup. I mean, that's always an option.
That's the nice thing about CryptoKit, right?
The Bitcoin expert, I really shouldn't feel paranoid about this because you can always just make a backup of it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, other news. So grab that 64-bit of Chrome if you use Chrome, or 64-bit version of Chrome. It's really, and it can take advantage of a lot of especially if you're using Windows 8. It takes advantage of a lot of these security features because Windows 8, they really thought good and hard about the 64-bit version of that being more secure. And anything you can do to secure Windows more, by God, do it. Well, don't do it by God because he doesn't exist. But
by Satan?
Yeah. Anyway, so other news, and this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Actually, while we're talking about other OSs, China, of all countries, is going to release its own OS in October.
Wow.
Of 2014.
Built in with spyware?
Yeah, I'm certain of it. Because speaking of Windows 8, they actually banned Windows 8 from government use. Now, they're saying it's for security. Honestly, I would have respected the Chinese a lot more if they said, look, this is such shit to get this off of our computers. What the hell is this?
Well, it's probably also not secure either, as far as the U.S. government being able to spy on them. But
yeah.
I mean, wasn't that a thing where the U.S. government a couple of years ago was complaining that the Chinese were inserting malware into Chinese manufactured computer products? And then they turned around and they were doing the exact same thing to the Chinese.
Yeah, they were doing it to the Chinese. Yeah, they complained about Highway and ZTE were the two companies that they said, don't buy their phones, don't buy their products, it's all spyware. And actually the NSA was doing the same thing to the Chinese. But China OS, or COS as they're calling it, it's Linux-based, so it's not they're not as gutsy as the Russians, who are actually creating an entirely new operating system with a new kernel that can actually run Windows software. And I love this OS, but or the idea of this OS. It's out there in alpha, but I don't know. It didn't get any traction, and we'll see if this Chinese OS actually comes out in October, because it probably won't be done by then. Of course, if it's Linux, I guess you can just skin it, right? But then, are people going to be like, well, it's SE Linux, or is the NSA watching that because the NSA was involved in the security features of the SE Linux kernel, blah, 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 blah. I don't know. Anyway, Sprint. Now, Stephanie, you and I, we both use Sprint, yes?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, and relatively pleased with it.
I've been actually really happy with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I switched to Sprint from Verizon, and I'm paying less. I'm getting unlimited data, which I had an unlimited data plan with Verizon, but they were I was afraid that they were gonna get rid of it eventually. I was kind of grandfathered in, and eventually, I think now they just announced pretty recently that they're cutting off their customers who did have that. Yeah,
it's getting crazy. So Sprint now, they're trying all kinds of innovative things ever since they got bought out by SoftBank from Japan, and they are coming out with what they call an App Pass, which at some point on this show I'm going to talk a whole hell of a lot more about subscription services like Netflix and Google Play Music, or YouTube, whatever that's going to end up being, all that stuff. But the App Pass will be you'll pay a flat fee. I think it's like $7.99 maybe a month. You'll pay a flat fee, and with that you will get access to some odd 200,000 apps or something that you can use for free. But of course, once you stop paying the bill, all those apps go away. I could see this actually being really popular, especially if it's a lot of games. I could see that being like a game rental service.
Yeah, they're going to have the content there. But I mean, there's such fantastic content out there as far as apps go. It's almost like the world of podcasting. It's like there's so many great podcasts that are available for free. It's like, why would you pay for one? Right.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could donate to it, right? But yeah.
Well, if you're not a total cheapskate.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a clever model for apps to where you pay.
I'm kidding, by the way. You want to enjoy our podcast for free, please.
Yes. Yeah. But if an app is free and it's ad funded, because like there's a little ad bar at the bottom or something, but then look, give us 99 cents and we'll get rid of that at that ad bar. Yep. I love that. I think that's a great model. I'm all for it. So anyway, I think that's the direction to go. I think this App Pass, like I said, for games it might be popular, but otherwise these subscription services, I have my reservations about some of them.
Yeah, because that means they can just take it away whenever they want to, right?
Yeah, to some degree you don't own anything. Yeah. But I suppose the discussion of property is better served for later in the show.
Yeah. A little foreshadowing there.
Yeah. So speaking of buying property, the last bit of business for Rapid Fire Stories, and we're definitely not going to get into a main story, but that's all right.
Darn it.
It can be talked about anytime. But Amazon. Now, I love to talk about this all the time, what I call the Amazon World Domination Tour, because this is the company that is going to crush Google, Apple, Microsoft, or at least make them far smaller than they are today. This is really the company out there to get them. And one of the things that actually people have emailed me about saying, no, look, this isn't going to happen because like YouTube's the biggest thing since sliced bread, and nobody's going to stop watching that, nobody's going to stop using that, Google's going to be making money off of that forever. Maybe not so anymore, because guess what? Amazon is buying Twitch for $1 billion. Originally Google was going to buy it, But then apparently, as I understand it, Twitch said that they refused the deal with Google, which is amazing that Twitch had the cojones to refuse Google. And they said no, because Google wanted so much creative control, and perhaps they even just wanted to fold it into YouTube, which I wouldn't be shocked. And so Amazon swooped in, and Amazon is apparently going to be pretty hands-off as far as its use goes. They'll probably add to it, but by and large, maybe they won't change so much the managerial decisions. But here it is, and if you don't know about Twitch, yes, okay, obviously it's not as big as YouTube yet. But as things like esports, because Twitch is mainly for video games, but as things like esports and a lot of this stuff, especially things like Minecraft or whatever, I mean, all these different things, or even where consoles like the PS4 or the Xbox One have a lot of Twitch integration, including handheld consoles have Twitch integration where you can automatically upload and communicate on it, blah, blah, blah. This is a recipe for success, and it has been so far. That's why it's valued at $1 billion.
These are two things that I have pretty much nothing to do with, like basically watching videos and playing video games. Yeah, just two things that I just don't really engage very much in.
Yeah, I am on the video games thing, but videos, I don't necessarily watch.
Yeah, I'd rather listen to a podcast.
So, but it's interesting, and the point I want to bring up real fast with this is that Amazon is that, now VentureBeat and all these other websites are suddenly saying Amazon's looking to crush Google and Apple. Just now.
Well, who's been saying that all along?
I wonder. Maybe it's the guy that hosts this show. Unbelievable. It took him that long to figure it out. We'll be back with more. This is Sovryn Tech. Don't mention him.
Are you searching for your soulmate? Someone you can trust, who will never betray you? Or cooperate with the NSA? Stop searching. With EasyDNS, you found a keeper. EasyDNS does it all. Domain names, web hosting, and managed WordPress hosting. EasyDNS stands up for your internet freedom. And with servers in Canada, they do not cooperate with the NSA. Go to EasyDNS.com. You'll love their services or get a full refund. They guarantee it. And they accept Bitcoin. That's EasyDNS.com.
Hello, Mr.
Sovryn. Brian Sovryn. And yours?
Natalia. Care to play a game of roulette?
I'd love to.
Number and color?
69. Black.
As you wish.
Tech Roulette.
It is time for Tech Roulette, where we cover stories that get sent into the show via the various channels available. Of course, SovrynTech at riseup.net, as well as on Twitter. Even some people have sent me stories via Facebook, Google+, BitMessage, a lot of options out there. And, of course, I am joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Hello.
And we've got a great subject. In fact, it's a great subject to have with a doctor in the house, a biochemist. That I've got that right?
Yes.
Yes, a biochemist. And
but so much more than that.
Oh, you're so much more. But graduated from Dartmouth, yes?
That's right. I got my PhD from Dartmouth. It was not easy.
Yeah, that's a story for... You should write a book.
I thought about that.
Yeah. Anyway, we got this in from a listener, and it's from a source that I actually usually steer really clear from. I'm not a fan because I think they're very, very gloom and doom, but they linked pretty well to, their sources, and so I didn't think that they went too far off the mark. To where I wouldn't use the story. And so the listener sent this in, and you can send, it's Zero Hedge. And for those that, Zero Hedge is kind of a liberty-minded, generally,
it's a little bit of a gloom and doom porn, I would say, sometimes.
Yeah.
It trends toward that. It talks a lot about economic issues.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't agree with everything it ever happens to say, and I might not agree. We may not agree with this. But my point is that if you have stories from Zero Hedge, you can send them in, and even if I don't like the source, I will cover them. I mean, for Christ's sake, if I'm going to do if I cover stories from CNN or the Telegraph, there's no reason I shouldn't do one from Zero Hedge.
Right.
So anyway, it's Dumb and Dumber: Scientific Proof That People Are Getting Stupider. in
Let's
quotes.
see this proof.
Yeah.
You speak of.
So I'll start reading here. Are people dumber than they used to be? Were previous generations mentally sharper than us? You may have suspected that people are getting stupider for quite some time, but now we actually have scientific evidence that this is the case. As you will read about below, average IQs are dropping all over the globe. SAT scores in the U.S. have been declining for decades, and scientists have even discovered that our brains have been getting smaller over time. So it seems on some days like you woke up in the middle of the movie Idiocracy. You might not be too far off. Much of the stuff that they put in our junk food is not good for our brain development. Our education system is a total joke, and most Americans are absolutely addicted to mindless entertainment. Fortunately, we have a lot of technology that does so much of our thinking for us these days, because if we had to depend on our own mental capabilities, most of us would be in a tremendous amount of trouble. Now, whole lot of judgment right there in that first paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, is he advocating going back to a time when you had to know how to spell every word and remember all these pointless things that you could just look up on the internet? I mean, I hear that sentiment a lot, don't you? That people shouldn't. People are getting so lazy. They don't know how to spell. They don't know how to handwrite. And maybe those skills aren't useful anymore because the world is changing, and we can free up bandwidth and space in our lives to use our skills to do other things, right?
Yeah, well, and I think actually you and I have maybe talked about this before, because to some degree I agree with this, that people aren't perhaps knowing, because okay, fine, they have empty space, but then what are they filling it with? And like I said, I'm not seeing anybody making jetpacks. I mean, I don't see, not that that's like the goal that everybody should strive for, but if they had to memorize people's phone numbers, I don't know,
instead of putting them in their cell phone, would they be making jetpacks then?
No, but I mean, yeah, I understand the point. But the point is that I don't really see people freeing up their times and their time and their brain power and doing so much more wonderful things with it. Yeah. You know what I mean? They just replaced it with value judgment, other junk.
Yeah, I hear you there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's a problem of motivation or interest or whatever.
Sure. And so the point that
people are busier than ever in a way.
Right.
Supposedly we have all this leisure time, but people are so busy, they're always glued to their email and their phones. And
yeah, see, well, that's a part of it too. I mean, that's getting off topic, but the leisure time thing doesn't make any sense, because okay, you got washing machines and dryers and dishwashers and all the stuff to save you the time from having to do it. But then someone email me and tell me what time you saved from installing a dishwasher. What are you doing now that that's just so drastic and life-changing that you hashed out $2,000 or however much to get all these wonderful machines in your life? Because I mean, I never, I've had times where I've bought all the fanciest gadgets and things to make your home, like the Roomba, even all this great stuff, so that you don't have to work. But then I was still busy as hell. And so what exactly did it solve?
Yeah, I mean, some of its priorities, what comes to mind is when people have kids, they'll often say, well, I didn't think I'd be able to fit everything in, but when you're a parent, you just have so little time that you become really efficient at organizing your time and just being able to fit everything.
How sad.
Well, why do you say that's sad?
Well, I mean, it took kids to force you to be efficient?
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, couldn't you become efficient in other ways, or did you have to basically put that on the shoulders of another human being to help you become more efficient at managing your time? I mean, I'm sure that's not the only reason they have kids or whatever.
No.
But I hear a lot of people say that, and is it really true, or are they just convincing themselves of that? I'm not sure.
Yeah, but even efficiency, I think, at some degree means a loss of you, when that's required.
Okay, so if you're not familiar with my story and you're just listening to this, I actually was in a really high stress, high pressure academic program for several years, for 7 years actually. I went to medical school for a couple of years with the intention of finishing medical school and becoming a physician, and also got my PhD in biochemistry. That's why Brian was saying I have this doctorate in biochemistry. And I actually left the program because I basically didn't want to become a physician. I saw the writing on the wall with Obamacare and stuff, and just the healthcare system is crumbling. And also it was so high stress, and I was already just feeling the effects of it on my life and my time and my sanity. And I just couldn't take it. I couldn't take the pressure, the time pressure, the stress. And I remember like just for most of my life, I felt like I was always a slave to the clock. I was like rushing around. I had to get to work at a certain time. I had to get to school at a certain time. I could only take a break at these designated times. And I really felt like I was not controlling much of my own time at all. And everything I had to do, like if I wanted to have a workout in the morning or whatever, I'd have to get up, make sure I get up at a certain time so I have enough time to work out and like pack it in and be really efficient. And then when I left, my lifestyle changed and I got a lot more control over my time. And what I've noticed over the past more than a year, about a year and a half since I've been on my own and not working in that corporate job, working at home, is that I don't want to rush. I feel like I have stuff that I want to do.
Yeah.
I do it because I'm more intrinsically motivated to do it instead of feeling pressure from the clock or pressure from other people. And I'm not rushing around as much, and that feels great. Like I could fit in more if I rushed and if I really kept track like a Nazi of all the time that I was using and tried to do it really efficiently. But I find that really stressful. Like I prefer to just kind of let it flow a little bit more and take it a little more easy, at least for the first couple of years while I'm off. You know, I'm not feeling that pressure to maximize my efficiency so much.
Well, it sounds like you need to have kids.
No, I do not need to have any kids.
Well, I mean, you're saying you have time to relax. Come on. You need to be taking on some responsibilities here.
Don't you think that's the wrong reason to have kids?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you're being facetious, of course.
So, yeah, absolutely. I totally understand that when you really do have control of your time, you find you want to actually like ease into things. And I think you feel a lot more at peace with what you're doing.
Yeah, what's the rush?
Yeah, right.
I mean, life is short, but, you know, prioritize the things you want to do and then take your time and do them as you feel comfortable.
Right. So moving on with the article, sadly, this appears to be a phenomenon that is happening all over the planet, that being the drop-off of SAT scores and all this stuff. As a recent Daily Mail article explained, IQ scores are falling in country after country. Richard Lynn, a psychologist at the University of Ulster, calculated the decline in humans' genetic potential. What the hell? Used data on average IQs around the world in 1950 and 2000 to discover that our collective intelligence has dropped by 1 IQ point. Dr. Lynn predicts that if this trend continues, we could lose another 1.3 IQ points by 2050. Now, I just want to say...
it's just like global warming, right?
Yeah,
it's the temperature's rising by 1 degree every century, right?
Yeah.
And the IQ's dropping by 1 point. What's the margin of error on that?
Yeah, exactly.
And is IQ a good measure of intelligence?
That's the point I wanted to bring up, absolutely, is that IQ, I think, has been shown to really be... it's in no way a complete picture, if it's a picture at all, of a person's intelligence.
Wasn't it back in the 1950s that he's referencing where they took the first data point that they would put sports questions on the IQ test to make sure the women didn't do as well as the men or something?
There was an issue that women were scoring very high on IQ tests, higher than men. And
we can't have that.
Yeah, and that just was not acceptable to the establishment. And so they put in sports questions into the IQ tests to make sure that men were at the top of their game. You know, and and today, ironically, though, women are scoring higher than men on IQ tests. You can look up stories about that. Those averages do exist.
Regardless of the gender thing, I mean, how has that test changed over time? It can't be an objective comparison.
No, not at all. And the average IQ test today, I doubt has a whole ton of sports questions. I don't think that they feel a need to.
The
to
SAT has changed over time.
Yeah,
like they're referencing SAT scores and.
Right.
Actually, every few years they change the SAT and even like the whole scoring process for it. The MCAT has changed. The MCAT is the test to get into med school, which I took in 2005, and it's changed. The whole scoring process. It's almost impossible to compare it to several years ago.
Sure, I think a lot of these tests are really, really terrible things to base any conclusions.
Yeah.
On.
All it does is measure how good you are at taking the test.
Yeah, and there's a lot
Speaking as someone who does really well on these tests,
yeah.
I just learned how to game the system, essentially.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's how the saying goes, right? You're taught to be a good test taker. You're not actually taught knowledge.
Yeah,
sure,
exactly.
And so, and there's a lot of people like there's James Flynn, who a lot of people like to quote, especially a lot of libertarians like to quote, who says that, oh no, we're much smarter now than we've ever been. But yet, if you're using his metrics, the studies are on this article, and of course you can look in the show notes.
So is that the Flynn effect that is referenced? You hear that referenced a lot, that the idea that actually over time people are getting smarter.
Yeah, it may not be called the Flynn effect, but that is the idea, that people are getting smarter just because...
There is an idea floating out there that people are just getting generally smarter over time.
Right. And
so this would seem... thing from Zero Hedge, which, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, it's a doom porn website, but
sure,
I mean, basically that's contradicting the idea that people are getting smarter and saying no, they're actually getting dumber.
Yeah, they're getting dumber, and whatever size of the brain has to do with, as it says later on in this article. And this is, like I said, the only reason I'm taking my time with this, or that I'm even taking the time with this article, is because it is well researched. And we're not going to get to all that research in this segment, but I mean, there's plenty here for you to look at for yourself. But it would seem that the data, which is what James Flynn and all these other guys run off of, the data shows that no, it's the exact opposite. We're getting dumber. Not only dumber, but according to a Cambridge University research, that our brains are literally getting smaller.
Now, that's an interesting element to this study, because one of the first things the first thoughts that jumped out at me as I heard about this was, okay, if you've listened to this show before, we've talked about it, you and I, Brian, I'm fascinated by the placebo effect.
Right.
And what is the effect of reading an article like this that says, yeah, people are just getting dumber over time? It's a sad fact, but it's totally true. Like, do you actually internalize that and then perform worse on tests, perhaps, because you've heard that idea in culture that people are getting dumber? And what is the effect of kind of hearing that over and over again as you grow up? Like, do studies like this actually affect the test results?
Well, maybe, but in this case, I think the common narrative is that we're getting smarter, not dumber. I think, yes, there's a cultural narrative out there that every generation does it to the next one down, where they say, well, back in my
these days
yeah,
are so stupid,
all that
yeah.
crap. But so maybe that affects it somehow. That kind of rhetoric.
I was going to say, I mean, like, this article referenced Idiocracy. I think there is a cultural meme out there that basically everyone else is stupid.
Sure.
Or people are getting stupider over time, or like the morons are breeding and that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, certainly that's out there. I want to read ahead a little bit more here.
Okay.
An earlier study by Cambridge University found that mankind is shrinking in size significantly. Experts say humans are past their peak, and that modern-day people are 10% smaller and shorter than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. And if that's not depressing enough, our brains are also smaller, which we were just talking about. The findings reverse perceived wisdom that humans have grown taller and larger, a belief which has grown from data on more recent physical development. The decline, said scientists, has happened over the past 10,000 years. They blame agriculture, with restricted diets and urbanization compromising health and leading to the spread of disease. And
do diseases make you shorter and stupider?
Kidney disease would make you shorter, wouldn't it?
Kidney disease?
Or I suppose it could make you taller?
I don't know if it would have any effect on your height.
Well, isn't giantism, doesn't that come from, or no, they die from a kidney disease, right?
Well, I mean, usually they die from heart problems if someone has giantism. Like, are you talking about like Andre the Giant?
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure how he died, but usually it's cardiovascular related. But I mean, anyway, like, is this the idea that, like, when we go to Ian Freeman's house, for instance, he's got a 100-year-old house and the door frames are lower because people were shorter back then. Mm-hmm. So if you compare humans today to a few hundred years ago, yeah, we're taller than that. But then if you rewind the clock another million years and you look at hunter-gatherers, we're actually smaller than them? Is that what this is saying?
That is the idea.
Got it.
So, Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just a wave that occurs. I don't know. But I mean, you and I, we actually, like 2 or 3 times, we've talked about, we kind of talked about a Paleolithic world and what that looked like, and we kind of theorized about it. And there's evidence to be found both ways. I mean, this is evidence saying that people are getting dumber. There's a lot of evidence, or quote unquote evidence, that says that people are getting smarter. And, you know, either way, whatever evidence you find, if you have a point to make, go ahead and make it. You know, you shouldn't, just because there's evidence to go both ways, you're never going to come to any conclusions if you do that. If you think, well, I've got evidence that says this is wrong, you still need to talk about it. And so, you know, we're talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, like, just to get kind of meta on this whole topic, does it really matter if humans, by and large, are drifting one way in terms of genetic characteristics? Like, doesn't it just matter what's going on for you and kind of like the people you interact with and surround yourself with? Like, you know, obviously we're all getting older and probably brain function declines, but am I striving to learn new things all the time? Yeah, I would say for sure. And so are you. So does it really matter if everyone else is getting smarter or dumber? Like, shouldn't we just be worrying about our own business?
Absolutely. But yeah, but then, like, why do a podcast? Yeah, of course. But it's
what would you say, like, totally subjectively, like if you just arbitrarily had to take a guess compared to your childhood now, what do you think are people getting smarter by and large, or dumber, or about the same?
It's totally subjective. People are getting dumber.
Okay, so you buy into this idea.
I totally buy into the idea that humans have been de-evolving for 10,000 years. I have no problem believing that, and I think that there is fair evidence for the idea that agriculture and civilization has been nothing but a detriment. Yes, the medical things have been fantastic. There's been so many, you know, wonderful advancements, the internet, you know, all these wonderful things.
Yeah.
But
Mr. Technology Podcast.
Hey, and someone's going to email me again and start calling me a Luddite. But I mean, if you're asking my personal subjective value, that's what I think. Because I think that, unfortunately, because you can have these developments and still be somewhat harmonious with your surroundings. You know, but instead you have this and honestly, it weaves its way into libertarian thought quite a bit, the idea that you must subjugate nature, that you must fight it and bend it to man's will.
Yeah,
you know, kind of like Lyndon Johnson said, we will bend nature to America's will. So
Is that what they were trying to do with margarine?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it's Ayn Rand too. I mean, that's an objectivist thing.
Rand said the same.
Skyscrapers.
Yeah, which is kind of weird, because she'd also say that everything needs to be unique and fit in where it is, but then at the same time she would say that no, you need to bend everything to man's will and all this stuff. And
the idea of savages, right? Like, primitive cultures are like bad, not as enlightened.
Sure, which I think is a terrible misnomer. That, I mean, people can choose to live that way if they want. That doesn't make them any more dumb.
Yeah, and perhaps they have something to offer. Sure.
I mean, there's a point. I think this article overall, and you know, the listeners can look into it on the show or in the show notes. But I think there's a point that they're saying that maybe even they're making something similar to what I was just saying. Not that I'm anti-technology, but that all these screens in our face are making us dumb or something. And I wonder about that. There's certainly a quote from the Dune novels, which I love, and the quote was something to, once man had made machines to do all of his thinking for him, to set him free. But then he found out, all that really did was allow other men with machines to enslave them.
Yeah, that's a timely quote for sure.
Yeah, definitely, considering today. And obviously Frank Herbert certainly wasn't anti-technology either, even though he was kind of, putting that message out there. But what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I wonder what role government has to play in this. Like, can we tie this back to anarchism? Because certainly the incentives that government has been putting out, as governments have grown over time, which they always do, they may start out small or whatever, but they always grow. And we've certainly seen a huge explosion of government just all over the world as far as its growth and its reach into our lives and the amount of control it has over us. That's expanded over the past couple decades. And so what incentives is government putting out? I mean, it's putting forth incentives for people to be dependent,
definitely.
To ask permission, to not have critical thought, to not be entrepreneurial, to just kind of fall in line and go along to get along and work for someone else and just don't stir up any trouble. And so is the government making us dumber in that way? Yeah, it's certainly...
No doubt.
At least you could make the argument that it is not providing incentives for people to stretch in terms of entrepreneurship and to try to invent new things and to try to bring value to the market. It's actually discouraging that in many ways.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with the point that government is... It wouldn't be... I'd blame government before I'd blame technology if people are actually being dumber. And hey, jury's out, okay? I mean, I gave a subjective opinion, but jury's out on that. Real quick, we got a few seconds. Stephanie, what do you think? Your subjective thought.
Oh, God.
Well, full judgment. Just let it rip.
I think it's about the same, honestly,
About the same.
through my lifetime. I'm 30 years old. I think people are just about as dumb or smart as they ever were, but I'm more worried about how smart I am.
Right on. All right. We'll be back with more. This is Sovereignty.
There's a lot of confusing information out there about Bitcoin mining. Customers have been burned by companies taking their money on pre-orders for Bitcoin mining equipment, only to receive their equipment late and miss out on opportunities to mine Bitcoins. But that doesn't mean Bitcoin mining is impossible. You just have to find an honest company to do business with. If you want to mine Bitcoins and you want to do it now, no pre-orders, no waiting. Look into the Antminer products from Bitmain. Their competitively priced Antminers are in stock and shipped from the US as soon as you pay. You could buy an Antminer today and be mining Bitcoins tomorrow. The Antminer line offers the best mining power per dollar currently available. 20% of the mining power in the Bitcoin network is contributed by Antminers. Not only that, but Bitmain is committed to support. You can get tech support and warranty service over the phone by calling 844-BITMAIN. For commercial accounts, they'll even travel to your data center to install your equipment. Get all the details at bitmaintech.com. That's bitmaintech.com. You're a lucky man, Mr. Sovryn. Not many win so well at the game of chance.
That's because it's not a game of chance, Natalia. It's a game of choice.
Game of choice.
It is time for Game of Choice, where generally I'll pick a video game to talk about, maybe one that's on its way, one that's long gone but deserves a good reinstall, good replay, something along those lines. But this week, Stephanie, I actually, speaking of things changing, something has changed. That doesn't necessarily mean people are dumber or smarter in this case, but women now, statistically, significantly, or by the percentages, significantly outnumber teenage boys as gamers.
Really?
Yeah, It's huge. 48% of women are now gamers.
And what's defined as a teenage boy?
Or of gamers, 48% of them are women.
Females of all ages?
It's not all ages. The actual, let's see, it's between. Oh wow! And then I have to find that number. But anyway, teenage boys is anybody
out on the data.
Yeah, no, that's all right. Teenage boys is anybody under 18.
Okay, so males under the age of 18 are less in number than some group of women?
Yes.
That's kind of ill-defined at the moment?
Yeah, between 18 and 40.
Oh,
so,
18 to 40-year-old women.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we're going to just arbitrarily call 18 adulthood, adult females outnumber teenage men. Boys.
Teenage boys.
Teenage males.
as gamers. Now,
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So, okay, so isn't the, despite the stereotype of like the 15-year-old in their mom's basement playing video games, isn't it actually true that more gamers are actually like of our age bracket, like around age 30?
Yes, the average age of a gamer is it's between 25 and 35.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the average. Now, I guess that number would be, we're crossing a lot of statistics here, right?
Yeah, so that means there's 50-year-old gamers as many as there are 20-year-old gamers.
Sure. But either way...
10, yeah. Anyway.
You want this math? It's like 3 a.m.
There are older and younger gamers, and the average age is 30.
Yeah, and the largest, and there are more... now, granted, I guess they're not necessarily beating out the amount of grown men. Well, no, I guess they'd be the largest. So either way, there's a ton of women gamers now. There's tons of them, and they're outnumbering teenage boys. Now, of course, a lot of people will say that the reason for this is the rise of casual games, right? Like on your smartphone, which you'll play a good game of Mahjong here and there, yes?
Well, but I don't consider myself a gamer.
No, right. Well, and that's kind of the thing, too, is that I think somebody might read this, and there is an article in the show notes to check out. I think some people might look at this and say something to the effect of, it's like, okay, no, women are not just suddenly all owning PS4s and Xbox Ones.
Yeah, that's what I was picturing. Like, I'm picturing them doing World of Warcraft raids or whatever.
Yeah, this is a really broad aspect here. This is like covering Android and iOS, and that really does skew the numbers, but that skews the numbers for a lot of things. So I wonder if, like the old saying goes, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. If any of these statistics honestly even matter. Yeah.
Because isn't there a lot of like sexism in gamer culture? Like you hear a lot about that, where at least when we're talking about online role-playing games.
Sure.
Right? Like a lot of women will pretend to be guys because they're afraid that they're going to get whatever, and they regularly hear like rape jokes and slurs and things like that.
Yeah.
And can be discomforting for some.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the game companies like League of Legends, they try and solve the issue by doing various controls, and of course those never work. But yeah, it's an interesting number to kind of toss out there to say that, oh, well, guess what? There's plenty of female gamers out there, because it is something that is thought of to be predominantly male. But that trend is breaking.
Interesting.
And maybe even, these Android games and iOS games, just to give it some relevance, maybe they will be the gateway drugs, quote unquote, to more serious gaming, like PC gaming. So, anyway, you can check that story out in the show notes. We'll be back with more Sovryn.
Time now for 90 Seconds on Sex with Dr. Paul.
I'm forever amazed at how much misinformation there is on the internet about different aspects of sex, and it's certainly no different with wet dreams or nocturnal emissions. Virtually no credible research has been done on the subject of sex dreams, so it's hard to know what information to trust. It seems that if a guy is having wet dreams, they can be infrequent, sometimes once every 2 to 4 weeks. Their frequency will most likely peak by age 20 and seems to go downhill from there. As for any correlation between how often a young man masturbates and has wet dreams, I've yet to see any research that even addresses this question. Masturbation might not be a factor at all. Nor have I been able to find any studies that explore why wet dreams occur. A credible explanation would need to take into account the fact that a lot of wet dreams aren't wet. Plenty of guys have dry orgasms in their sleep with no ejaculation. That's right, male orgasms with no sticky pajamas or stained sheets. Well, how does that happen? We also know that some men have more wet dreams than others, and some don't have any wet dreams at all. Why wouldn't it be the same for everyone? Wet or dry, the good news is that men aren't the only ones who have dreams with sex in them. Plenty of women have orgasms in their dreams, too.
For more, visit 90secondsonsex.com.
You are quite the man, Mr. Sovryn. Are you busy tonight?
Natalia, if you'll excuse me, I just received a very important email.
Later then, Mr. Sovryn. Important email.
It is time for Important Email, where I cover the emails that get sent to sovereigntech@riseup.net, or really any of the venues possible. And of course, I am joined by the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy.
Oh, hello. Such a fun way to spend an evening.
Absolutely.
I'm actually having a lot of fun doing this podcast.
Yeah, me too.
We haven't actually done a podcast in a while. Like, we kind of took the summer off from Sex and Science Hour. You know what?
Actually, I'm glad you asked that, because one of the questions I get asked the most is
when is Sex and Science?
When is Sex and Science Hour going to come back? It comes to my email address, or even on SoundCloud. because you can comment on the SoundCloud page. I love it, and I love interacting with people on SoundCloud. They constantly ask, "Hey, is that coming back?"
Yeah, we're gonna have to. We do plan on making more shows eventually. It's just we reached a period of time where we really kind of got burned out on making Sex and Science Hour because. Shall we just say that the reasons we got into doing the show, it turned out to be a little bit different than we thought. It was kind of sold to us as, hey, do this show. It won't be very much work. We'll take care of this and this and that. By Adam B. Levine, which I've talked to him about that. And it didn't turn out to be like that. We ended up having to do a lot more work than we thought we would. And that wasn't really something that we had agreed to or budgeted for in terms of our time. So we ended up just spending a lot of time on it, and it was great because people loved it, but it was too much. So, we're planning to make more time for it and get back into doing it. Hopefully more kind of on our own terms, I guess, this time.
Our incentives kind of were shifted underneath us.
Yeah, for sure.
For doing the show. So that's about as far as... Yeah, so...
Yeah, but it's not over. We're planning on doing more. We just have to sort of get around to it. And thank you for giving us the space to take a little break from it. And
everyone...
We'll be rebooting in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone said they loved the show,
Yeah, I loved the show.
Yeah.
Like, aside from all the work that we had to do, it was really fucking fun.
Yeah. No, it really was fun. So anyway, let's see what other stories before I get it, or not stories, questions. Before I get into that, I do want to just make a quick mention. I want to readdress what we talked about during Tech Roulette. And I just want to say that even if I feel that humans have been de-evolving, I do think that trend can be reversed.
How do you reverse it? By, having sex with aliens?
Yes. No.
Getting pregnant, making halfling babies and putting them in incubators, getting probed, perhaps?
That all
Somebody
sounds...
out there finds this really sexy. I'm not saying I do, but...
Hey, I'm just about to let you just go ahead and keep talking, but...
No, seriously, how do you think that humanity can become smarter?
Oh, I think technology is a part of that, or at least a proper understanding of technology and its role. I think an understanding of diet, an understanding of of ourselves, like really reaching inside who we are, and not bending to talk about bending will, not bending will to society, but as in paying attention to the individual. And I think a lot of that can lead us back on that, on that trail. Not that, hey, look, people, I think some people might hear that sort of thing and say, it's like, well, what are you're promoting Nazism? We need to be better humans or something like that. No, by no means. I'm talking about individuals. That's what I am promoting, is the idea of the individual. And that I think the individual can do a lot for their own health.
Self-development.
Yeah, self-development, mental and physical, and all the way around.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Anyway, other questions. Let's move on. Let's see. Someone actually emailed me because I said, look, if there's ever going to be a Riddick movie. Now, Stephanie, you have not seen these films.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, which is why you haven't asked me to do a very steamy role play about it. But
you haven't asked me either. I mean,
well,
just saying, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Well, in any case, Riddick 4, The Chronicles of Riddick, I'm a fan, though that might shock some. But Vin Diesel's original, foray into cinema as the character of Riddick, he did announce that there will be a Riddick 4, and so a listener kindly emailed that to me, and I am letting you know that Riddick 4 is on the way. I don't know when, but it is something that is on the way. And just another question, this is also another very popular question, was when is the first game from Zomia Offline Games going to be released?
I wonder that too.
Yeah, and I mentioned it briefly during I believe the special for, I did a top 8 about video games in the 90s, because this game is going to look like something out of the 90s, so it was fitting to talk about it then. I did mention it then, but if you're curious still and you didn't catch that, the release is either going to be December 2014, late December, or it is going to be March 2015. It's going to be either of those. And actually, Stephanie, of course, I did already announce this, but you are going to have a very interesting role
I'm going to have a cameo.
You are going to have a full-on, full-video cameo.
I might be like a floating head or wear some kind of neat costume.
Yeah, you will be introducing the universe that is being created. It's going to be really something.
I might be like a little green alien.
Yeah. And universe, what I mean by universe is I mean the story, I'm not going to create the universe in the game.
I am. I don't know, but we're going to have to talk about this.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, Brian, cool. Good on you for announcing that. I mean, that now your listeners can, kind of hold you accountable to that.
Absolutely.
I've often, I've had a couple of times as a public figure where I've been working on projects and I've been reluctant to announce them because I'm thinking, oh, what if I don't get it done on time? And what if I don't want the pressure? And what if I can't release it? Or what if I decide to stop or whatever? And so I haven't announced them, and I had kind of wished I had. I should have started promoting it earlier. It would have made it easier. So good on you for that.
Thank you. Yeah,
maybe it's a little scary to do, but
a little bit.
Do you feel scared?
Yeah, I mean, because pressure's on. But then I do very well under pressure, and also it really. I get the response from a lot of people saying they're very excited to see what's going to happen. A lot of people said it on Twitter and emails and all this, and so that also helps. Really eggs me on. It makes me want to keep going. And I like to build up a good hype. And I like to think that I would deliver on that.
That's a smart move.
Yeah, because I know what it's like for companies to not deliver on hype, or franchises to not deliver on hype, like Star Wars or Ethereum. I mean, oh shit, I said it. Anyway, moving on. So. Let's see. Well, while we're talking about the universe, there was a listener email, and I've addressed this to some degree before, but I'll go ahead and touch on it again before we get into a question that you might find interesting, Stephanie. But this one is, how do you know how many habitable planets there are? And do
you claim to know?
Yeah. Habitable planet, habitable...
Because it says so in the Bible?
No, it doesn't say it in the Bible.
12?
No. Habitable planets, meaning that planets that life could, exist on, grow on, develop on, etc. And the answer to that question, and this is in the entire universe, not just the galaxy, in the entire universe, is 18,000.
Okay. How? Where does that come from?
And you're
Are
close.
You like the Pope? You have a direct line to God.
I have a direct line.
And he just told you.
That's right. I have a direct line. It's in my pants. No, actually, the answer comes from, you're close, Stephanie, to where I got it from. But I actually got it from the Talmud, where the Talmud says that there are 18,000 worlds that have been created for life. And now,
where does that number of 12 come from?
When did I ever say 12?
I don't know. It was in my head for some reason. Maybe it's just like 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's probably the 12 colonies. You're thinking Battlestar Galactica.
Or maybe it's like the 12 levels of heaven or something from Mormonism with the planet where you go to meet Jesus when you die.
Which, speaking of Battlestar Galactica, ironically, the original one, the great one, had a lot of Mormonism in it. And so, yes, to some degree, actually, you weren't far off either. Mormonism does kind of talk about that idea.
I'm just getting my religions all mishmashed together. I mean, it's all just one big blur.
Yeah, so, anyway, I don't know that there's actually 18,000 planets out there. I do believe that, unlike most people, I do believe that and I believe that the logic stands that there are not that many planets out there. Most people think, there's got to be millions and billions of habitable planets out in the universe because, if there's just one around this one star, imagine with so many stars out there and so many galaxies, how much there must be. I definitely am not of the school that's so. And there's a lot of very intelligent people who also feel the same way. Ray Kurzweil, not to say that they're the epitomes of intelligence by any stretch, but there are also others, of course, the Fermi paradox, which I talk about often on this show. So I'm definitely open to, if I did find out that the number was 18,000, I'd probably believe it. That would not shock me. As to where the bulk of society, I think it would shock them that there were that few. So.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it.
Yeah, well, it's meaningless, right?
It's meaningless until the aliens come and talk to us, because we don't really have a spaceship we can go and try to find them right now, so.
Sure.
It's an interesting thought experiment, but...
Well, speaking of aliens that may have come here, of course, I also don't think aliens have ever visited here, just based on physics. You know, the idea of, like, how could you travel here? They would have had to have either inhabited Mars or one of those, you know, Europa maybe, which, hey.
But Brian.
Yes.
You have to ask yourself.
Could it be? Extraterrestrials. Well, honestly, we're going to talk about pyramids.
Great. I was hoping you'd say that.
So this week, it's kind of been making the rounds that archaeologists, scientists have finally cracked how the pyramids were built. And maybe I've talked about this before, because for some reason when I read this, when this got asked of me and sent in to me, I could have sworn I'd heard people saying this before. But it's getting past...
Is this the thing about the sand?
Yeah, the wet sand.
You found that article before. I don't know if you talked about it on the show, but you definitely talked to me about it.
I'm pretty sure I did. But anyway, this is going around IO9 now. Like, a lot of people are sharing it. It was even featured on CNN. It was all over the place. Everybody's talking about, it's like, oh yeah, we finally figured it out. This is how they did it.
Yeah, it's just one of those clickbait articles, like... secrets of ancient Egyptians building the pyramids. The pharaohs hated them for it. You know, It's like one of those things that gets you to click on it, but it doesn't actually give you what it promised in the headline.
Right.
Like, all the comments on that article actually said that like, this doesn't explain how the pyramids were built. Yeah, it's a cool trick. If you basically, the gist of it is, if you pour water over sand, not so that it's saturated wet, but just so that it's kind of like damp to a certain level of wetness, it makes it really easy to slide large blocks of stone over it.
Right, you could put it on a sled, and that sled would very easily glide.
Yeah, and there are actually pictures of Egyptians doing this, but there are not pictures of Egyptians building the pyramids.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Okay, there's pictures of what they describe, and this is what they use as one of their major proofs of that. They're moving some statues, you know, like statues of whichever pharaoh. And it's on a sled, and there's a whole bunch of slaves pulling the sled. And so how did they do that? And the thing's huge. Like, you have a sense of scale in the hieroglyph of how they're doing this. Okay. But here's the part that, and you hit it, Stephanie, because
I always hit it.
You do
hit the right spot.
Oh, every time. Yeah. Here's the part. Here's the part that people are missing about this, is the fact that you see how they moved the statue. Yes, that's because ancient Egyptians were incredibly meticulous in describing how they do what they do. It's written all over the walls. Okay, which makes it weird when you have a building where there's no writing inside. Mm-hmm. That being the pyramids themselves.
And no depictions of them being built.
But right, and that's the other thing, is that, yes, you found that picture of how they did that because that's how they did that, and because they are meticulous in how they would write everything down. But pay attention to that fact, because you're not seeing how they built the pyramids.
Yeah.
If that was how they did it, you would have found the hieroglyphs, because the one that they found, you know, the hieroglyph that they're showing off right now, they've known about it for 200 years. I mean, this isn't new by any stretch. And so, yeah, that's really it, is that, no, this isn't how they did it. And like you said, how the commenters had even mentioned that, okay, yeah, that's how they might have moved the blocks, but this doesn't say how they built the pyramids at all.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't the depiction actually of some guy, like, so they were saying there's this depiction of a Egyptian, like, pouring a jug of water ahead of a large stone block that's being dragged, but isn't it like a statue that's being dragged? It's not like, it doesn't even look like a block.
Yeah, no, it's a straight up, it's like this huge statue, which is still amazing in and of itself. So, you know, there might be some...
You know, the Egyptians, like, okay, so my whole problem with the ancient alien theory also is that, if you could even call it a theory, I mean, like, it's just kind of silly, but so they don't, like, give ancient humans credit for how intelligent and resourceful they were.
Well, no, James Flynn says that they were dumb.
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean...
No, it's in the IQ test. The Egyptians took IQ tests, and they failed miserably.
Is he extrapolating the data back from 1950 back to 3000 BC or whatever?
To 3050
BC. Right, exactly. It's like the hockey stick graph in global warming. But
yeah.
No, I mean, like, the whole thing is, like, it seems like ancient alien people just have this real problem with acknowledging the idea that ancient humans could have been really smart, really creative, really inventive, and able to make these awesome tech. Like, the Egyptians were really good at chemistry. Like, they knew how to make soap. They knew how to do certain aspects of medicine. They knew how to extract formaldehyde from ants to make the mummies. They knew how to use formaldehyde to preserve body parts. They knew how to, I mean, like, they preserved people for thousands of years, but with these mummies. They made batteries, the Baghdad battery.
Yeah.
It's a weak acid, it's got a copper cathode or whatever, and a lead anode, I don't know.
Sure.
I don't even know how it works, but yeah, like, they had a lot of chemistry that they used, and who knows what else they had that we don't even know about, but they don't get credit for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with the pyramids, now, I mean, I guess I may have talked about this on the show before. So if I am rehashing information to people, I do apologize. But it's great to hear your perspective on it, Stephanie. But I think really
it's like, okay, sorry, one more little rant on this. Like, we are all human beings, like the humans that lived thousands of years ago, 5,000 years ago, they had like mostly the same genetics that we have. And they had all the equipment that we have biologically. And so to say that they wouldn't be smart enough to make these basic discoveries about math and chemistry and astronomy and architecture and everything else is basically an insult to anybody who has the same genetics, because we've got the same genetics as them.
Well, it's an insult to the species. I
right?
mean, yeah.
Like, how are we managing to walk around in the world with medical technology and running water and stuff? Egyptians had that too.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, every generation, or maybe not every generation, but I'm sure every century has had its Teslas, has had its Einsteins.
Yep.
That includes 3000 BCE. I mean, I don't see any reason why that same brilliance wouldn't shine back then.
Absolutely.
For, whatever reasons.
It's like these were these primitive people. They couldn't have invented flight or anything like that. They couldn't have invented.
Which they might have pulled that off.
Well, yeah, there's this little glider, a replica of like a small glider that actually flies.
Yeah, that they made. Well, yeah, there's some massaging to where it would actually be legit, but the idea is that maybe they figured out like catapult gliders.
Yeah.
And that's and again, you found the evidence of it, and that's the thing. Anything that the Egyptians did themselves, you can generally find the hieroglyph. You can find some degree of evidence of how they figured that out and how they put it together, even if it's just in their law books. Like they knew that beans made you fart. Okay?
Yeah, it was considered rude.
Sure. And so the irony is that these people that wrote every goddamn thing down, okay, when it comes to the pyramids, they didn't write shit. And when it comes to the pyramids, they didn't write anything in them either. They are so unique as far as that goes. And it's not like they have a hard time writing on things. I mean, they write, when you look at some of the obelisks there, I mean, this stuff is like, it almost looks laser cut. It's so efficient, so well done. There's no reason they couldn't have written inside of these things. It doesn't make any sense. So my opinion stands.
So you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, is it? No. But my opinion stands is that the Egyptians were nothing but squatters. They stopped there, and they saw the pyramids, and they said, what the hell are those? We're going to build our civilization right here, right next to that little river, too, while we're at it. This is great.
So who built them?
You have to ask yourself. No, you can email the show if you want to go into that.
Oh, what a cliffhanger.
We'll be back with more.
Hey, everybody, it's Stephanie. I am the Sovryn Tech producer. But did you know I am also a voiceover artist? Yes, it's true. I make audiobooks, commercials for your business. I narrate explainer videos. Pretty much any audio project that you can think of, I'm probably willing to work on it, or I have worked on it in the past. And if you want to hear some samples of my previous work, or you want to find out a little bit more about what I do, then I encourage you to check out my voiceover website, which is smvoice.info, smvoice.info. Now back to Sovryn Tech.
Agent Sovryn, go to this webpage and follow What kind of webpage is this? Is that Natalia? I better go to the
Website of the Week.
It is time for Website of the Week, where I cover a website that I find useful, interesting, and while maybe sometimes it's something terrible, but this week isn't something terrible. And while Stephanie and I are discussing the mysteries, another question that has been asked oft of me is on the Sovryn Tech. If you go to sovryntech.com, or if you look at the podcast, there is, I have the Sovryn. You put in the artwork for the episode and everything, and I have kind of a schema that I use for the various episodes. If it's a special, it looks one way. If it's a regular episode, it looks this way. If it's episode 69, it's a picture of me with a tinfoil yarmulke on, because while we cracked a lot of Nazi jokes, guess what? We're both ethnically Jewish.
You got to keep bringing that up.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to be clear, before someone starts accusing. Well, anyway, never mind.
Has anyone ever accused you of anything related to being Jewish?
No.
Has anyone ever said, like, okay, so
I had one person message me on Skype and said that I don't know if you're working for the good guys or the bad guys.
Well, sometimes you don't know either.
That's true.
I think you're just working for yourself, honestly.
Yes, at the end of the day.
But like I'm on Let's Talk Bitcoin, and Adam B. Levine, the main host of that, Adam B. Levine, has had some people say things to him like, "Oh yeah, of course the Jews are getting into creating money.
Yeah, they're controlling Bitcoin. They're behind Bitcoin.
His network token LTB coin." He's had that accusation come at him at least once.
Sure.
But I think you're kind of defensive about it, Brian, honestly, because maybe in the past you've had that happen, right?
I've gotten accused of all kinds of things. I mean, it's really crazy.
Well, I know there's that one guy who came up to you and said he could see your eyelid, like, blinking from the side.
Yeah, he said I was a lizard. Like, he literally thought I was a lizard.
Yeah.
And
you were feeding off hate.
Yeah. So, but actually, I don't feed off hate.
No.
But if you're wondering, and I'm gonna kind of prove it here, though maybe I'm just doing reverse psychology. Those clever lizard Jews. But if you notice on the Sovryn Tech symbol, there is, there's a pyramid, of course, which don't pay any attention to that, and it's green. Please don't pay any attention to that. And in the O of Sovryn, there is what looks like a yin yang. Okay, inside of it, and it's red, blue, and white. And a lot of people have been wondering, what the hell is that? Well, I'm finally going to reveal what that is.
Oh, cool.
And it's been there for a while, because I want you to check out a website. And the website is nonkilling.org. And what this is the Center for Global Non-Killing. Now, I am in no way not necessarily endorsing. I am in no way saying that, this website is pure thought. It is the purity of anarchy and all this stuff. No, I'm sure it's loaded with fucking status. Like, maybe status that are actually fucking. Okay. I have no doubt.
They're certainly reproducing at a fast clip.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, fine. But there's lots of free resources here. But the beauty of this website and of this, this organization, because again, it's nonkilling.org, it's the Center for Global Non-Killing, is that at least they are entertaining the idea. And this is the basis of the idea. It's to promote change toward the measurable goal of a killing-free world by means open to human creativity and reverence for life. Now,
cool. I like that already.
Yeah, and at base level, it just means humans. It does not. Non-killing is not in reference to hunting of animals, though it can go that far. You can have that conversation here as well. But lots of free resources. It's kind of like the Albert Einstein Institute by Glenn Sharp, where it's all about nonviolent resistance, and even that's an incredibly statist organization. But I think there's a lot of really powerful ideas to glean from these things.
Yeah.
And I think the Center for Global Non-Killing is another one.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot to really think about. The morality, if you will, the ethics of what it means to take another human life. And I don't know many places that have this discussion. That's what makes this website so exciting for me.
Yeah, that is really exciting, honestly. Like, I'm really glad you found that. I mean, who does it have, like a person who started it or anything?
I don't recall his name, but he is it's Glenn Page, I believe. He's the original guy that started a long time ago. This organization's been around for a while, and I wish I knew about it before. So in fact, I found out about it searching Wikipedia, and suddenly I saw it said, see also non-killing, and I was like, no shit. And I looked it up, and it really fits well with my own personal ideology. So
cool. Maybe we could get him on board with the anti-statism.
I hope so. So check it out, nonkilling.org, and let's make them anarchists.
Hey, look! Got an energy spike. Hold on! Launch. Bombing the Narn back to the Stone Age wasn't enough for you?
Then we heard it. The sound of something terrible being born.
This is madness. Station 3 to Commander Ivanova.
Centauri have launched a full-scale assault.
Time is coming on! It's our turn now!
2 million tons of spinning metal, all alone in the night. A world where empires rise and fall, where dreams are born and die, where war and hatred are challenged by love and faith. In the third age of mankind, an age plagued by an evil empire that seeks to destroy humanity. It is our last, best hope for peace, for victory, for freedom. It is Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5. Ride a bike so well.
I don't know if I can get us away from that helicopter. Don't you have a gun?
Oh, there's never a need for lethal force. I'll handle this.
How did you do that?
We'll be fine. A quick hack solves everything.
Hacksec.
It is time for Hacksec, where we talk hackers and security. And woo boy, do we have a story this week. In fact, Stephanie, this story was actually brought to my attention by the very clever and wonderful Paige Peterson.
Oh, Paige.
Yeah, she is great.
Paige. Oh, Paige.
I'll just let you keep going.
No, you should go on with the story.
All right.
I could go all night.
Yeah, hey. I don't blame you. All right, so this is from Wired, and it's how cops and hackers could abuse California's new phone kill switch law. And I'll start reading here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's that bad. Beginning next year, if you buy a cell phone in California that gets lost or stolen, you'll have a built-in ability to remotely deactivate the phone under a new kill switch feature being mandated by California law. But the feature will make it easier for police and others to disable the phone as well. And that's a big word, others. Raising concerns among civil liberties groups about possible abuse. Now, before I get into this, I always find it interesting. California is such a mess.
Yeah, okay. Like if you've ever bought any product, you'll usually see this warning on the back of the box that says, "Just so you know, we have to let you know this product may contain trace amounts of lead and may be dangerous for pregnant women." California law, whatever.
See, now that's what I was going to bring up. According to California. So I've always said, ever since I was a kid, it was like, so lead only kills me when I'm in California. I'm never going to go there.
Yeah, it's really weird. It almost makes you like ignore any of those warnings altogether, which could be dangerous in itself.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But anyway, let's read on.
Yeah, please.
The law, which takes effect next July, that'd be
I was
July
led
2015.
Sorry.
Requires all phones sold in California to come pre-equipped with a software kill switch that allows owners to essentially render them useless if they're lost or stolen. Although the law, SB 962, applies only to California, it undoubtedly will affect other states which often follow the Golden State's lead. It also seems...
Yeah, and besides, what are they going to do? Like, the companies are going to make a specific phone that's just for California?
Yeah, all right, these are going to California, boys. Just ship those to California.
No,
this will be across the board.
That.
And before you know it, New York will be doing it.
Oh, yeah, Massachusetts will be next.
Yep, yeah, exactly. It just goes, and then New Jersey, it goes in that order. Yep. It also seems unlikely phone manufacturers would exclude the feature from phones sold elsewhere. And although the legislation allows users to opt out of the feature after they buy the phone, few likely will do so. The law raises concerns about how the switch might be used or abused because it also provides law enforcement with the authority to use the feature to kill phones.
Yeah, I bet you can't opt out of that ability, right? Like, you can opt out of the ability for you to use it, but not for the cops to use it, right?
Yeah, and I just want to say quick, I mean, I had a problem with my phone, with my old Galaxy Nexus. And normally I would fix it myself, but I didn't want to deal with it. I heard that. I think everybody else heard that. And this is a phone, my GNX, I had Cyanogen mod on it, okay? And so I call up Sprint. It's like, look, could you handle this? And they're like, yeah, okay, we're going to reset your phone. And so they instantaneously, like, literally just took control of my phone. And wow. I'm running Cyanogen mod. I'm not even running Android. I'm running the open source software. It's all in the SIM card. The SIM card, tells the story. And they had no problem just instantaneously shutting off my phone, and rebooting it and getting into developer mode, all this good stuff. And they of course they said to me, it's like, well, I think there's something really wrong with your phone. Now, I didn't tell them I had Cyanogen mod on it because that's probably what they were detecting. So maybe to some degree there was functionality they couldn't get control of. Okay, but that's the thing, is that, look, I mean, this overall, this story shouldn't be shocking because I think by and large they could already do this anyway. I mean, like I said, Sprint could turn off my phone, no problem. All based on the SIM card. And so now, of course, I only get phones where I can take the SIM card out. That way I can keep control of it, because that's really the center of it all. Anyway, the law raises concerns, or I already read that part. It's great for the consumer, okay, but... Or no, I'm sorry, I didn't read that part. The law raises concerns about how the switch might be used or abused because it also provides law enforcement authority to use the feature to kill phones. And any feature accessible to consumers and law enforcement could be accessible to hackers, crackers, who might use it to randomly kill phones for kicks or revenge, or to perpetrators of crimes who might, depending on how the kill switch is implemented, be able to use it to prevent someone from calling for help. And I want to skip a little bit ahead in here. Let's see. The CTIA, a trade group for the telecommunications industry, continues to be opposed to it, however, calling the law unnecessary because other solutions already exist to address the problem of stolen phones, including stolen phone databases and anti-theft applications that cell phone owners can use. And that's true because, I mean, you have a Lookout. And of course,
you've talked about that before.
Yep, Lookout allows a signal flare where even when the battery's about to die, it'll send off one last shot of its location. Mm-hmm. There's even Google now has an Android app that will allow for geolocation of your phone. There's a lot of these things, all of which can be controlled. But it's funny because when you put these security features in, or you put these kind of backdoor things in, most people just don't. They just instantly think, "Oh, well, that's good. That way, there's some security here." But they don't think about how it could always be used against them.
Yeah, and especially now, like with what you talked about, maybe last week or something like that,
right.
Pretty recently on the show. Your new phone is waterproof, and so you can't deactivate it by throwing it in a river.
Right.
But you could have it deactivated remotely by the cops. I mean, that's just a huge level of control that's been ratcheted up that you don't have,
Yeah, now with that phone, I made sure it's one that I could pull the SIM card out of.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting, and also I can pull the battery. But that's an interesting thing up and coming is these waterproof phones. Now, there's some people, I'm not saying I'm one of them, okay, but there's some people who are a bit more conspiracy theorists that think the reason they're making waterproof the phones is so that no matter where you are, they can track you. There's nowhere to run. And I mean, that falls into, in my opinion, a whole lot of logical issues, with that. because it's like, well, then just drop the fucking phone. You know what I mean? And don't carry it with you.
It's not attached to your body yet.
Yeah, exactly. So that's getting way out there. I'll read a little bit more here. More importantly, however, the EFF continues to oppose it on grounds that it could be abused by law enforcement. The organization is focused in particular on the law's failure to specify who can activate the kill switch and how it may be abused by others. In a letter sent to California legislators earlier this year, the organization cited a controversial incident in 2011 when transportation officials in the San Francisco Bay Area shut off wireless cell phone service during protests stemming from the shooting of a young man by transit police at BART stations. The incident prompted an amendment to California's public utility codes to limit the circumstances under which law enforcement can sever communication services, an amendment that also would govern the use of the kill switch. And so this is the thing. Ferguson. We know about Ferguson for one reason and one reason only. Twitter. Honestly, at the end of the day, Twitter is the reason Ferguson is a national story. Twitter is the reason that so much of that is being brought to light. And
yeah, that's the reason we know about so many things that happen today.
That's a fact, because this is unfiltered source of info, okay? And it's mobile. It happens where it happens. And this is the thing. If the state police or the SWAT teams or the National Guard could just go into Ferguson, Missouri, and just turn off all the cell phones, tell me where that's helpful.
Well, it's helpful to the cops.
Oh yeah, it's helpful to them because then
it's not
they
helpful
can just,
to anyone else.
Right, exactly. Then they can just run roughshod, on the denizens of the area.
Yeah,
and it's scary. This is the thing. You have to. I mean, the point for me, and we can talk about this a little bit more, but the point for me with a lot of these things is that the idea of, do you want to plug security holes? Yes, you do. Okay, because leaving back doors open also allows for these kinds of things to occur, but they allow for them to occur secretly. Mm-hmm. But then, at the same time, making security features allows for control openly. And so there's a very fine line, and maybe that fine line should be called like Wild West, code or something, where you want it to be, really solid, but at the same time, security features need to be completely optional. It needs to be apps you can install. That one organization here was absolutely right to say, look, we can already do all this. Lookout can do this. Google can do this. Hell,
yeah, except their features are opt-in.
Right. Hell, the ISPs can do it. All this creates is a situation where law enforcement, government, and even crackers there's no more middlemen.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through Lookout. You don't have to go through the, not the ISPs. You don't have to go through the, through your provider, your cell phone provider.
Yeah.
You don't have to go through the app, whatever. You don't have to go through anybody. Now it's just direct. No, I can send a signal to kill that phone. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Because this is when you start to regain panopticon. Because I talked about last week, I said, yeah, we should be able to watch public officials when they're on public duty all the time. They should have no qualms about being filmed, photographed, whatever, while they're, doing their job in the status matrix that we exist within. Okay? And this eliminates that possibility. This is where, because I said, look, Panopticon isn't working right now because we're able to film what the police do. We're able to film, whatever other government body does, whatever other bad actor does. Okay. But Panopticon is when only one side can look into the jail. You can't look both ways. And this is a return to where, yes, Panopticon could exist again. I mean, would you have any thoughts on this, Stephanie? We've only got a few seconds. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's boiling the frog, right? It's just like this stuff has been gradually ratcheted up, and then suddenly one day we wake up and suddenly we don't have control over our cell phone, whether it works or not. We don't have control over our files. They're all in the cloud, and Google has them, or Amazon has them, or
we
Dropbox
don't have control of our homes.
We don't have control of our homes, yeah.
There's a Nest.
Yeah, we don't even own the operating system. Windows can just kind of gank our access, so we're just our digital lives are slipping away, and so much of our lives are digitized that everything's slipping away.
Maybe we should be careful.
Maybe we should be Luddites.
Hey, everybody. I really appreciate all of you that listen to Sovryn Tech. I hope you have as much fun listening to the show as I do making it. And hey, if you have a good time listening or learn something from listening, you can donate to the show. Just look in the show notes at sovryntech.com. There you'll see addresses for Bitcoin, BLACKCOIN, Next, Litecoin, whole slew of ways to donate to the show. And believe me, I'm not going to complain if you only send 2 millibits or what equates to $2, unlike some people. But, also you can donate via PayPal using the affiliate links on the left-hand side of sovryntech.com. And oh yes, please feel free to use those affiliate links. You can also help the show by circling me on Google+, following me on Twitter, or following Sovryn Tech on SoundCloud. Anything you can do to help, believe me, it helps. So I love all of you, and thank you so much for listening. Now let's get back to more Sovryn Tech. Well, looks like we made it out of the country. Good driving. Let's find some place to relax.
Somewhere with a nice big bed, I think. Let me pull up an app.
Sounds good to me.
Software of the Week.
It is time for Software of the Week, where I cover a piece of software that I find useful. Sometimes it's something terrible, but this week I've got one of those pieces of software that I think is pretty useful. Now, Stephanie, you, of course, your phone is huge. I mean,
everyone notices it.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody comments, my phone is so big.
Yeah, as soon as you pull it out of your pants, I mean, people
they
can't help
wonder
but
how
look.
I even fit it in my pants in the first place.
I don't know how. It really is. I mean, it's a
lot to handle.
It's got like 6-inch screen.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah,
I've got to use two hands to finagle it.
Of course, you have the HTC One Max. But
Yes.
Now the nice thing about having a phablet is your battery life is really good. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's a great battery life for sure.
Yeah. So now, but a lot of phones don't have so grand of a battery life. That is one of the things that, boy, I wish there isn't really an extended battery for my Kyocera Hydro Vibe, which that's a mouthful.
Sounds like a sex toy.
Yeah,
the Hydro Vibe.
The Hydro Vibe. Ooh.
I mean, I have to say,
it's kind of been used. Well, never mind. We won't talk about that.
We went swimming yesterday.
Yeah.
In a
All right,
lake.
we will talk about that.
A waterfall, a river, right?
Yeah. It was a waterfall off a river. Yeah.
Yeah, it had some pools, and
Sure.
we took some pictures. I mean, that was cool. That was a fun
there was
use
this
for
one
that.
you standing against the rock with the water coming. Oh my god. Anyway, it was great to have a waterproof phone for that.
Mm-hmm.
But not that those pictures are going to be anywhere on the internet. But the battery life on my phone admittedly could be a little bit better. I do wish it was. I'm going to have to order another battery, which is what I used to do, is I just carry multiple batteries with me. But if you also, listener, if you have an issue with your battery life, this was actually this app was recommended to me by a Sovryn Tech listener. In fact, it is the same listener that left the Navy. Which kudos
cool.
to him.
I remember that.
I am consistently getting emails and tweets saying, just tell him thank you and round of applause.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for leaving.
Yeah, the service of leaving. And congratulations in all seriousness.
Yeah, on your newfound freedom. So anyway, and it's Greenify. Okay, and Greenify is this really great app for Android phones. And what it'll do is, and you don't have to root your phone either. A lot of these kind of power saving apps will require you to have your phone rooted, but in this case, you do not. And what it'll do is it'll look for those apps that you're not using. It's pretty smart. It'll look for the apps that you're not using, and it will put them into kind of a hibernation mode. Okay, and you have a lot of control over how all of this works, but it'll keep these things from shooting up tons of data, because especially like social media apps, they are data hogs. They're sending data back and forth all the time.
Yeah, what are they sending? I mean, I assume it's just NSA book doing its thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of location data. Of course, there's push and pull, meaning you're getting notifications.
Yeah.
There's a whole slew of things that, to some degree, are legitimate. Others I wonder about. But Greenify will kind of put all that under wraps. It'll get that under control for you. And it does its job really well. I used it, and I had a very marked difference in how well it worked. I mean, it was like one of the top apps for 2013, I think, as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was
That's
really
cool.
Yeah,
I'm always like, I have a high threshold at this point for installing apps, because I think at one point I like assessed how many apps I had on my phone, and it was like 350 apps. Like it was just ridiculous. Like there's no point in having that many apps. So I just went through and like took an axe to my list of apps and deleted a bunch of them.
Yeah. When I got the new phone, I did the same thing. I'm like, no, there's really only a few of these I actually need.
Yeah.
And because I used to.
But this
be
one
well
sounds
over
like
100.
it could be really useful.
It is, and it's better than, because there's things like titanium backup, freeze. There's some others that will kind of do a similar thing, but they'll make it so that like they just totally disable the app.
Yeah.
As to where this one, it just puts it into a hibernation mode. You can still use it off and on. And so I think this is really important. I mean, battery life is kind of everything, especially if you rely on your phone, and some people really do. Battery life means it all. And instead of carrying around one of those, big charge packs, or I know they have charger packs that are like the size of a stick of lipstick, or, a stick of lipstick.
What else do you call it?
Yeah, it just sounded weird. But anyway, or carrying multiple batteries, like I said, maybe you can just figure out how to have your phone just be a bit more efficient with that app control.
Indeed, minimalism for the win.
Minimalism for the win. Yeah, maybe we'll talk about minimalism here in a minute.
Oh, boy.
But Greenify, it totally gets... I love it. I think it's fantastic what it can do. And I really love it when listeners actually have recommendations for what software to try out. Because I can't try out everything. I don't have all the time in the world, especially now with, my new duties with Zomia Offline Games. I mean, I have even less time to really look into some of these things. And so... it's a great tip, and I don't, admittedly, this sort of thing doesn't, there's other apps like this for iOS, and if you know what they are, feel free to email me if you know a good one, because I don't use iOS, so admittedly, I don't know.
I can't help you there either.
Anyway, nothing wrong if you do. We'll be back with more. This is Sovereign Tech.
What does freedom mean? Tune in to LRN.FM to find out. LRN.FM is the Liberty Radio Network, a collection of live talk radio and podcasts, all coming from a principled pro-liberty perspective. LRN.FM show hosts aren't left, right, or conspiracy kooks. You can tune in 24/7 to LRN.FM via your phone, computer, satellite, and more. Listen free anytime at LRN.FM. That's LRN.FM.
Oh, Natalia.
Oh, it feels so good. I'm so close.
I know what you need.
The climax.
It is time for the climax. Woo, boy.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy that as much as I do, Stephanie.
I love it. I have to say, you put together, I mean, I helped you with the voiceovers and stuff, but like you wrote the scripts, you chose the music, you mixed it all together, you did the audio production on all these new music beds for Sovereign Tech, and I just think they're fantastic. Like, you did a great job.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate the work you put into them, certainly, because, of course, you are Natalia. I think everybody knows that, but in case they didn't.
No, I am Natalia.
Oh, God. Yes, you are.
Respect me, or you will pay.
I will show you all the respect I can. Or you can make me pay.
Worship me.
Absolutely. Anyway, all right. I teased last week that we would talk more about property because I kind of got talking about property. In fact, someone tweeted at me, and I'm not really certain on how to take this. I assumed he was kind of joking, but he had said that, I don't know if your show is just completely retarded or it's extremely profound. Maybe it's both. And
he's definitely negging you.
Maybe it's a neg. Yeah. But anyway, I talk about some pretty wild stuff. And so I got a lot of emails. I can't read all of them, but I got a lot of emails about the idea of intrinsic value because one emailer, great emailer, had talked about time being the only thing that has intrinsic value. And that ended up going into a conversation about property in general. And I had debated whether or not, because the very core of property that a lot of people bring up is this idea that you own yourself. Okay. And I had questioned do you own yourself? Because when you say you are owned, you are saying your property, but when you say your property, that means you're something that could be exchanged.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so...
Well, before we get into it, I just want to say that we did get a special bit message from a listener, which I am on bit message.
Oh, sweet.
And this bit message, this person had said, I would be quite content in all, and he's referencing this discussion about property. I would be quite content in all honesty, listening to the two of you, that's you and I, talk about laundry detergent choices.
All free and clear.
Yeah. Actually, literally. And of course, it went on to say, love your show and love it when Stephanie is an active part of it. But I'm eagerly looking forward to hearing the two of you discuss this very important and interesting topic. So, and I'm guessing it's a he. I don't know if it's a he, but the bit messenger had said that property is another word for a characteristic, quality, or attribute. So he added that into the mix, and I could read more about that. But why don't you go ahead? When I had said that property is something that could be exchanged, that you are something that could be exchanged, you had a thought that you wanted to get into.
Yeah, I was going to say that, okay, so I myself had sort of a mutualist phase. I don't know if you could even call it mutualist, but definitely sort of like a left libertarian sort of phase of my life. And I mean, I like still sympathetic to a lot of those ideas. Mm-hmm. And one of those ideas that you hear a lot in those kind of circles is the idea that, like, well, self-ownership really needs some questioning, because if you're saying you own yourself, then that means you're a piece of property and people are not property. And okay, I get it. I feel a little bit of sympathy to that idea. However, I mean, it is also true that you really can't argue against self-ownership without engaging in the stolen concept fallacy, where you have to exercise self-ownership to argue against it, and it's basically axiomatic, because you can't say, well, I don't own myself, because you're actually like exercising control and agency over your own mouth and your own body and your own brain to make that argument.
Right.
But I do actually like find some sympathy in that argument still, because maybe ownership is not exactly the right word. Like, you can say you are yourself, right? Like, nobody really disputes that. You are yourself. You have agency as a person. You're a sovereign individual. Oh my God, it's late. You're a sovereign individual. This is the best time to have these conversations.
Yes. Yeah. When you're drunk, tired.
Yeah. I'm almost at that point.
Yeah.
And you have control over yourself. You act, you act as a human.
Right.
You take actions. So, like, all of those things are true, and they all come together, and none of them really imply that you are a piece of property. They imply that you're a sovereign individual and a autonomous being, right?
Yeah.
So, like, I don't really question the concept of self-ownership, but maybe the word ownership is a little bit like just sets some people off, pushes their funny buttons, and it's not maybe the ideal word, because it's the same word that we use to describe our relationship to, like, a dog or like a piece of physical property.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to say I own myself and I own my car or I own my computer in the same sentence, like, something doesn't feel right about that to some people, because they're like, hey, well, I'm not on the same level as a computer or a dog or a car.
Right, but you're using the same word.
Right. And so why is there no good word, like in English, to describe the relationship that we have with ourself? It
so
seems
you would
like,
agree that the word that saying self-ownership and property might be a problem, like that those are problematic terms.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's the term that we have in English, but, like, why is there not a special word to describe that special type of relationship?
I don't know that there's a word anywhere in any language. In fact, I know certainly there wasn't one in German, because Max Stirner, an egoist anarchist that I'm a fan of, he actually called it. He said he didn't call you property, yourself. He didn't call it self-ownership. He actually called it the unique one, or he said it is the thing that cannot be named. It is the end of language, like that.
Wow, he felt really strongly about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he had no hard dogma on property, which I already discussed last week, but. Anyway, but that he actually said it is his point, I think, was to say that it is impossible to put into words what a person really is. And I mean, how do you feel about that?
I don't think it's impossible to put into words.
Do you think it needs a new word?
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Like, I think you can kind of describe it. It doesn't have a succinct way that you can really describe it, but everybody knows it. I mean, I hate to use the "we know it when we see it" thing, like the Supreme Court, like pornography or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, obviously, we are ourselves. We have volition. We have control over ourselves. We have agency. We are sovereign. We are our own person. Like, all of those phrases are ways to describe the relationship that we have with ourselves that we don't have to a piece of physical property like a computer that we may, quote, own.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think there's something to the idea that there really needs to be a new term. But then why don't we go to the idea of property itself? Because I had kind of hinted at the idea of private property and personal property, the differences there, the idea that you can't own land.
Oh, can we just go back to self for one second? Because there was one more point I wanted to make. So sometimes you'll hear mutualists argue that you don't actually own yourself because there are so many body functions that are involuntary. So, like, you couldn't just decide to stop your heartbeat if you wanted to. Like, you can't control your heart and how fast it's beating, and you can't control, like, when you have to poop and things like that.
I disagree with that, because you can take a gun to yourself and you can control exactly what your heart does. To destroy a thing is to control a thing.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So that's
and
not
actually,
an accurate argument.
You can even, like, if you think about it, you can actually have some influence over the speed of your heartbeat. And things
pearl
like that.
divers do it in Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
They actually slow their heart to where they can dive deeper.
Yeah, but I mean, like, or just the idea of, like, putting your hand over your chest to feel your heartbeat, that can actually help you slow it down.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
And I mean, not just your heartbeat, but, like, people exercise control over their bowel movements and bladders all the time. If we didn't, we'd just be walking around, like, shitting ourselves all the time. And like, I mean, people obviously don't do that. So to argue that you don't own yourself because you can't control certain involuntary body functions is not true. That's not that's not a valid argument. So yeah, that was just the quick point I wanted to make.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great one to bring up. I definitely don't believe that argument. You know, I don't fall for that argument. I don't go with that argument because I think that's not true. But with property in general, I think there's a lot to be said. I do debate, you know, like the idea of personal property. I do, you know, my anarchy does run a little red, I suppose. In that, you know, I wonder, like, Proudhon makes a great point about, he says there's three types of property. That there is the property.
Women?
Yeah, right, yeah.
Just kidding.
Women, children, dogs. Okay, got it. And of course, Proudhon was an anarchist, you know, 19th century. The first person to ever call himself an anarchist, I think, actually.
No, really? Is that really true?
Yeah. Like,
wow.
to use that word and to call himself that, I believe he is the first
Didn't
one.
he write in French?
Yes.
So he didn't say anarchist.
That's Greek.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So anyway,
carry on.
Yeah. he would lay out essentially that there are three types of property. And that is, there's the property that we kind of know and understand today, where it's usually held by a deed or a piece of paper of some kind. Like, you have a title for your car, you have a deed for your house or for land or whatever the case may be. Okay, there's that kind of property that would seem to be mutually agreed upon that you own it. Like, people would all have to accept, they'd have to agree upon that piece of paper. Okay?
Well, do they agree upon the idea that you own it, or is there, like, a central authority enforcing the idea that you own it via the deed?
Yes, there would have to be that enforcement body.
Okay, so this idea includes the concept of a state or perhaps a certifying agency or something like that.
Yeah, it might not be a state, might be an insurance company, like so many libertarians love to talk about insurance companies.
Mm-hmm. So somebody that you have to trust.
Yes.
Okay.
And then that you have to pay or whatever.
Right.
The second type of property is like a hammer or even a computer, something that you hold in your hand, that you control. items, movable items, this is generally the second type of property is what a lot of people recognize. Not ANCAPs, everything's private property to them, okay, but where people see a difference, this is what they would recognize as personal property, something that you can have control over.
So something that you enforce the property rights to.
Yes, and that you could...
yourself by holding on to it or whatever.
Yeah, by holding it or whichever.
Or by eating it or something.
Sure, and we're being very broad here. And the other, and you know, I think we're going to go into overtime with this too, if you're open to it.
Yes.
Yeah, this will be the very first episode of Sovereign Tech that's a little longer, and it will be the only one. Because I'd much rather do multiple episodes a week than I would have a much longer one. But this one will be longer.
I'm honored.
All right. So now the third type is effectively communism. Okay, is the idea that it's property that's just, oh yeah, everybody gets an equal share, everything's, you know, kind of tossed around. And I might be...
Wait a minute. So communism is not a type of property.
No.
It's a type of system. So Are you saying that basically the third type is just non-ownership of property?
Yeah, kind of. You know, like the idea that, oh, it's everybody's thing. And that's completely illegitimate because then it's not property if you don't own it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's state-enforced property rights. That would be type number one.
There's enforced property rights.
Okay, externally enforced.
Yes.
Enforced not by you.
Right.
And then there's self-enforced property rights, and then there's no property rights. Is that how we can boil down those three
I think so.
categories?
And if I'm messing up Proudhon's words, then
he can just come back from the grave and correct you
and exercise his IP rights on me. But anyway, and so if the third one, and I think everybody would agree that the third one is complete, or not everybody, I'm sure there's some people who think it's okay, but by and large, most people would agree that the third one is completely illegitimate. But then the question becomes...
Well, would they? I mean,
no, not everybody would, but I think a lot of people would agree that...
No. I'm thinking about like the idea of the amount of property, even anarchists or like ANCAPs who believe that there should be common property, like paths that people walk along in the woods. Nobody really owns that, but everybody kind of contributed to making it.
Right.
By beating it down with their feet or whatever.
Right. And so that kind of becomes a public good?
It's unowned, essentially.
It's unowned? Okay. Sure, but before we get into that kind of thing, the third form of property and the first form of property, how are they any different?
So how is it different to have the state or some other agency enforcing property rights via deed or title?
Yeah, either society is enforcing, and society would have to agree, because society could just revolt against the enforcers, if they don't agree with
not recognize that deed as legitimate.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay, so society has to agree either that this piece of paper means you own it, like land, or society says that you can't own anything. Either way, I think 1 and 3 rely upon everybody agreeing that you own it. Okay, or that you don't own it, or what the nature of the property is. As to where the second property, number 2, the one that you control, I think it might be the only form of property out there.
Well, okay, what is property?
And I said might.
What is property? So, my friend Jake from the Voluntary Life podcast is a big fan of Hans Hermann Hoppe, but not in the way you probably think. Because when I think of him, I think of like shunning gay people and things like that.
Yeah.
Which, forget about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Just ignore that. Put it to the side. Hoppe has actually done some really good work on property. And basically, I'm sure I'm messing up his ideas, but basically the idea is that, according to him, property is a way of resolving disputes in society and having a way to resolve conflicts.
Yes, and actually that bit messenger that we quoted earlier, it made this point as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did he bring up Hoppe?
Didn't mention Hoppe, but he did mention that libertarians generally think of it as a way to settle disputes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is, right? Like, if you have a dispute, like if you're holding a computer in your hand and I say, no, that's my computer, like, we're going to have a dispute about that and it's going to be settled one way or another, right?
Sure.
Maybe it's by you taking the computer away. Maybe it's by me saying, yeah, okay, you do. That's yours, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. But it's going to be settled one way or another. So the question when you're talking about type 1 and type 3 of property, according to Proudhon, would be, is the state an effective mechanism of settling disputes about who owns something that has a deed or a title? And in the third case, is there even a dispute? Like, is somebody trying to claim the land and then everybody else is saying, well, no, nobody can own that land or whatever?
I imagine that dispute would occur.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, they all seem like ways of resolving disputes. Not to say that they're good ways or good ways in every case, but they're ways. So they would be property.
Sure. But this is the thing, though, is that I think I really have a problem with the idea that, like, I don't really hear anybody, especially in anarchist circles, coming up with a solution to the first type. With these contracts and pieces of paper.
I think you're right about that, and they haven't until now, and it's not really been written about in an academic way, because I think the solution to that might be trustless systems.
Like blockchain technology.
Yeah, like blockchain.
Blockchain,
yeah.
No, I could...
Trustless systems, decentralized, consensus-based ledgers like blockchains.
Yeah.
And that is a way of resolving disputes about property that doesn't require putting any trust in a central authority, because someone can essentially homestead stuff by putting a record of it in the blockchain that, hey, I claim this, whatever, and then they can work it out there, or they can have a contract with someone else to transfer ownership of some property through the blockchain and have a record of it. So, or you could have colored coins where somebody owns a token that represents a piece of property in the physical world or whatever.
Yeah, this is the idea of smart property. Now, of course, my initial issue with that is simply that code can be cracked.
Yeah, or what if someone doesn't recognize the legitimacy of the blockchain as an authority?
Either way, people just will have, quote unquote, have to agree. Now, a lot of people, and I think they're a bit more pragmatic, a lot of anarcho-capitalists in particular that are a little more pragmatic, ironically, their argument for what property is and what you can own is whatever you can defend, you can own. Mm-hmm. But that's not, that's type 2. I mean, like, they're making an argument for type 2 where only the things that you can, like, directly control. You know what I mean? And now maybe they're saying you can defend the land somehow.
Yeah, I think they would. I think they would say that. They'd say that, like, there's some arbitrary amount of land that you can reasonably defend from attacks.
Right.
And maybe that's different depending on what piece of land it is and how badly other people want it.
Sure.
Right.
But, I wonder, though, if we're making this all way too complex. And we're making it too complex for the purpose of appeasing the aristocracy.
Explain
or the
that.
oligarchy.
You could tell me more about that.
because like, I don't think most people even cared about owning a forest. You know what I mean? Until the feudal lords, like, really came in.
Ah, now we're talking about, hunter-gatherers. Right.
I don't think they gave a shit, about it. And
right. They probably, they actually had very little, hunter-gatherers probably had very little property, but in a way they had a lot of abundance because there's all this food out there in nature, and they just have to go get it, and they're not taking it from anyone else because no one really owns it.
Sure. And I think that might be more of perhaps the real possible answer is to get to a point of, like, post-scarcity or maybe even zero marginal cost. And somebody's going to freak out and say Zeitgeist, Foundation or whatever on me, but that's not what I'm talking about. To where, maybe once again, people just don't care. There's just so damn much.
Yeah. Well, my question is about that. Have we been there in the past? And if we adjusted our attitude toward, like, okay, this is what I want or need. Mm-hmm. Like hunter-gatherers, I'm talking about them right now. This isn't making a lot of sense, but thinking about hunter-gatherers, what they wanted or needed was, like, a lot of things, but food being one of the major ones.
Sure.
Shelter, and maybe a few things that they needed to survive, like furs or, like, clothing, protection from the elements,
right,
other people, that kind of thing. And that was all just out there for them in nature. And they probably didn't really feel the need to like exercise a firm like sense of control over it or a grasp. And they couldn't because it was nature, and nature's wild.
Right.
And animals don't acknowledge like your ownership rights to certain things. Like a dog will come and take your food if you turn your back or whatever, if it can. So like they just...
But Stephanie, they didn't have art. They did not have art.
Well,
they did not
cave
have music.
Paintings, aren't there?
I'm being facetious because they most certainly had some of the most beautiful art ever created by humans, and they had wonderful music as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I mean, like, did they effectively have post-scarcity? Because like everything they wanted was kind of right there in front of them.
Yeah, I think to some degree they did have a post-scarcity. I think this is exactly what happened between the bonobos and the chimps. I think on one side of the Congo they had everything. On the other side of the Congo they had nothing. And the abundance ended up being the bonobos that are just loving and fucking, and all that good stuff. And then the chimps on the other side are the violent species. Yeah, so to some degree I think you're right. I think there was an abundance, and so they didn't really care.
Yeah, so I mean, are there too many people in the world right now that... like, if we just kind of like, sorry, I don't know how to say this, but like, is that possible basically in today's society to have abundance for everyone?
I wonder. Well, this falls under kind of an old argument that do we have an energy problem or do we have a consumption problem?
Mm-hmm. Right, because the more you want, the less there is out there to serve those wants.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of ways you can go with that kind of idea. And some people will say it's a fallacy, whatever. I mean, let them think what they want. Okay. But yeah, I mean, I think, okay, is post-scarcity in and of itself possible? I want to address that in a second, but I think people are open to not owning things, and I think anarchists, I think ANCAPs, I think take your pick of the most hard-edged propertarian person out there is okay with not owning things, because they use Netflix. You don't own any of those films, and when they go, they go. You don't have any control over that because they use Kindle Unlimited, because they use a music service like Spotify, whatever.
Yeah, in fact, there's been a lot of articles coming out recently about how we live in this rental culture of like where people aren't owning much anymore. In fact, they're renting most of their stuff.
Sure. From
houses to cars to, I mean, anything, movies, just data storage or whatever.
Even the more well-off will lease their cars. They won't even buy them.
Yeah. There's a sense of freedom in that too, because you're not tied down or committed, to something. It's just you grab what's out there and you use it, and then when you don't want it anymore, you let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and there's plenty of people falling into the minimalist, kind of way of thinking. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and not everything works the same for everybody. Okay. But, I mean, I'd even go so far. I've even said in the past that, your country is your backpack. You know what I mean? And more or less whatever you could fit into that. I'm not saying that's for everybody. I'm not saying that's necessarily what I believe, but that's an idea that gets tossed out there as far as how much does a human actually need, especially in our sharing economy, in this technological wonder of a world that we're in.
I feel like we're sounding like just hippie pinko commies,
like
and I don't live my life that way. I just want everyone to know that's not really what I'm saying.
Yeah, this is just an exploration of the idea and of the nature of this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like minimalism is more about not letting your stuff own you.
Sure.
Rather than not owning a lot of stuff. It's not really about the amount of stuff you own. It's just the amount of freedom you lose by getting mired down in stuff that you don't really need.
I think it's the truth. I think that occurs.
Yeah.
I really do.
Oh, it does, for sure. I mean, absolutely. If you don't do spring cleaning every once in a while, it just takes energy away from you.
Yeah. Yeah, so this idea of private property, the idea of owning land, a lot of this stuff, I really, I wonder how much of it is marketing, how much of it is just, holdovers from kings and queens and You know, all this business. I mean, even, you know, something I learned pretty recently is that the American dream, that phrase, the American dream, is from the 60s. It was a marketing slogan by Fannie Mae. That whole idea that the American dream is to own a home and all this shit, it's totally a marketing slogan.
Well, it really worked.
Yeah, it worked really well. It was great marketing.
Yeah.
Of course, America itself is great marketing. That's all it is. You know?
Yeah, I mean, right. Factually, as Mark Stevens would say,
yeah,
what is the United States of America?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
What is the American dream?
Right. So, yeah, so I wonder how much of this, and this goes to maybe a deeper subject than we were planning on going, but how many people, including anarchists, you know, of whatever flavor, how many people are just wanting to be on the top of the pyramid instead of really wanting to flatten it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How many people, and because honestly, these people that there's been some stories, I'm not going to go into those stories. There's been various stories recently, okay, going around with libertarians, with anarchists, with pick your fucking term. I get so sick of that when people are like, well, they're not real capitalists. It's like, well, just fucking know what I'm talking about, okay?
That's not a very kind way to expect someone to...
No, but...
you can't expect them to be a mind reader.
Yeah, but they're being asses because they're just like, well, they're not the pure product. I am pure. And, I mean, come on.
Try your best to describe it, and if they don't get it, then... You know,
exactly.
Move on, I guess.
Okay. So, but there's a lot of these people where, look, they're doing their private business deals with their third-party arbitrators, and they've got their, you know, their beautiful contracts. They even seal them with a little bit of gold just to make it look really good, just to make them feel like Philip, like King Philip, you know, and wipe their ass with it a little bit, you know, just because they can. And their business deals fall through just like anyone else's, and they run into scamming, and they run into, you know, all these terrible shit deals just like anybody else's. No government involvement whatsoever, none, and they fall flat on their ass, and they're trying to create LibPair. They're trying to create, you know, Liberty Paradise.
Yeah, I mean, you could say so much about the hypocrisy of some people who claim to be libertarians. Like, okay, the liberty movement attracts a lot of weirdos, you know.
Sure, I'm here.
Me too. Raising my hand right now.
Yeah, I am not perfect, folks.
But, you know, there are people in the liberty movement who engage in blatant violations of non-aggression principle, you know, like people who have physical violence, like fights, and it plays out on Facebook, and they're, you know, posting pictures of their injuries and all this stuff. People who threaten one another, people who, you know, have business deals gone sour, of course, you know, like we were just talking about. People who advocate peaceful parenting, but then, like, do shitty things to children, like leaving them without dads and things like that. I mean, all kinds of hypocrisy. And you know what? We're not perfect either.
No.
Like, and I don't think we ever really have claimed to be.
I hope I haven't.
But sometimes you just wonder, not that I'm saying I don't want a stateless world, because I really do, and I really believe it would be so much better than what we have today.
It'd end a lot of wars.
But it's not going to be a conflict-free world, especially if the same people who are living in this world live in that world.
Right, right.
Because they do have conflicts, and they do have problems, and they have drama, and just believing in the non-aggression principle or saying you're a libertarian is not enough to live harmoniously with others, apparently.
Sure.
Because people fuck up.
Sure. And, you know, and it really, to me, it comes down to needs. And this is where a lot of my questions come from. And so I don't know if we're going to have an actual, or at least I don't know if I'm going to have a satisfactory answer by the end of this. But it comes down to needs, because, like, I think property rights, the excising of property rights, which is what a lot of these deals are all about, comes down to, what does this person want? What do they need? And I don't think no one's actually talking about what they really want.
What do you think someone really wants? Like, if they buy a piece of land or something, is it security?
Yeah, maybe security,
predictability.
I don't know, but I also can't say that they don't just want some kind of lifestyle obsession. That's what I'm saying. I don't know if they don't just want to be King George as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the tagline. It's like a man's home is his castle. and he is the king. I mean, and it's
right.
like,
why aren't we advocating getting rid of kings, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the jingo. You're in the lingo. It's the jingo. It's in the jingo. That's the name of the episode. But I don't think. God. Yeah, I don't. This is what happens when it's 3:30. I don't think people. I don't think they have any idea of. I don't think most people, and this includes a lot of anarchists, and I'm not saying I'm any better, but I don't think most people have any idea what they really want.
Yeah, there's definitely a lack of self-awareness among a lot of people. I mean, and us too sometimes. Like, we do things that aren't very self-aware sometimes.
Hell yes, I have done terrible things in my life. Terrible. And not far away either at times. I mean, no doubt. I am not claiming to be a good person.
I think you're a good person,
Well,
Brian.
I appreciate that, but I'm not, unlike, I'm not going to go there.
You're not claiming to be perfect.
Yes, right? I'm not claiming to be perfect.
And neither am I.
Right on. I think you're perfect. But anyway, seriously. But anyway.
Laundry detergent?
Yes, let's talk about laundry detergent. I don't think people know who they are or what they want, and yet they're going around telling other people what belongs to them and what doesn't. Okay, and they're laying out all of these, like, how the future is going to be, how property works, and blah, 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 blah. And this is an argument against government, believe me. Because, I mean, if people don't know what they want and who they are, they sure as hell shouldn't be ruling over anybody.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of people will get to the end where it's like, well, like, because I know, Stephanie, you made the comment that you don't know that a stateless world would be better, but maybe it wouldn't be that much better. I think a lot of people say,
I think it would definitely be better, but it wouldn't be conflict free. That's what I said.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. That's really it. Is that, like, I guess in a stateless world, things would be voluntary, and so you could kind of, you could walk away, right?
Yeah, or you'd have voluntary ways of resolving the disputes. Maybe property would be one of them, for sure. Yeah, property would be one of them.
Sure.
And other ways, arbitration and communication and so forth.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so, boy, we've talked all this time.
So, wait, where were you going with that? I'm a little confused. It's totally late.
Yeah, it's really late. I was just going to say that, I don't know what I was going to say.
Okay, I think I can wrap this up.
All right.
I think what I hear you saying is that you referenced the fact that I said, I'm not sure if an anarchist world would be conflict free, and people don't really know what they want, and maybe they're seeking to meet some kind of needs by acquiring property, but they're not actually meeting those needs. It's just kind of a false panacea. And really, and then all at the same time, there are also these libertarian gurus or celebritarians or whatever that people put a lot of faith and trust in, and they're not perfect.
No.
And they fuck up sometimes very publicly, and it plays out right before everyone's eyes, and everyone says, oh, how could this have happened? But they're only human at the end of the day. And really the solution is, okay, look inside yourself, try to understand yourself. What needs are you trying to get met? And worry about yourself and your problems, and follow yourself. Don't put your trust in gurus.
I think you hit it. I just want to make one last point, is just that make sure that your desires and your dreams are not the product of a lifestyle obsession, that they are a product of what you really want.
And that can be really difficult. But
sure.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, just a little disclaimer here. We're really not talking about anyone specific. I was thinking actually during this whole conversation of at least three different incidents.
Yes.
So I'm not trying to direct
multiple different people.
Yeah, my comments at anyone specific in particular, but regardless, it's good advice, right? Like, try to get to know yourself, worry about taking care of what you need and figuring out what you need and what's going to genuinely give you that long-term happiness and pleasure and fulfillment and meet your needs, rather than just kind of short-term quick fix type solutions that aren't going to make you happy in the long run.
Yeah.
And no one's perfect either.
Nobody's perfect.
Least of all celebrities.
That's right.
Us included.
Us included. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been super fun. And it's been a late night, but we'll listen to this in the morning and see how retarded we sound.
That's right. So anyway, carpe lucem, everybody. I'll see you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.